Hey guys, Spidey09 here. I hope you're having a marvelous day. This is a really special occasion for me to have Tyler the Hammer, right? Holzhammer. Did I say it correct? Holzhammer?
That's right. That's correct.
Perfect. I butcher names all the time, and it's just the worst feeling ever to do it. Well, there's no sweeter sound than the sound of one's own name. Is that right?
Yes, yes. Especially with my IG show being called Hammer Time. So
Hammer
that
time.
that's definitely true.
Are you ever gonna incorporate the MC Hammer intro at all? Like, is that a thing? Is that a plan?
Well, I'll have to talk to my production team on that, but yes, I definitely have some MC Hammer, puns and related things in there as we continue to ramp up production on some of our IG content.
Awesome. Well, we're going to give it a moment to let some people jump in. I've got some friends already here. We've got Marvel Guy 239. That's my buddy Kent. I think you know him as well.
Yes, I believe I do.
We got Trev Gaiman. What's up, man? And look, we got the one and only Dre from Dre Studios. He's one of the bigger artists in the sketch card game. We got Joshua from Marvel Madness MCU. What's up, buddy? And
What's
we
up,
got
man?
Victor from Marvelous Packs. You probably have seen these guys on your Instagram feeds. So very cool to have them jump in. Well, Tyler, look, I would love for you to do an intro because not everybody's on Instagram. Not everyone who watches this channel, which is primarily a Marvel card focused Marvel content channel, follows Sports Card Investor, which is where you live, right? That's where you exist most of the time. So I would love for you to give an introduction. Just kind of tell us who you are and why you are here on my channel today.
Yeah, so my name is Tyler Holzhammer. They call me the Hammer or Hammer at Sports Card Investor. So I've been with the company now for almost 2 years. I started as a director of operations and now have moved to a content producer position. So getting to dabble into more of the things that I enjoy and that I'm very passionate about. So, I do various different things, whether that be talking about market updates or also my own show, Hammer Time, which goes into various topics, whether that be baseball, football, whether that's sets or trends, as well as some Marvel talk and some superhero talk as well. So I know for me and you, that's how we finally cross paths.
Mm-hmm.
Noticing that me over in the sports world started to dabble into Marvel and have been promoting it in that way. So it's great to join you, and it's great to be a part of Sports Card Investor and collaborating with you.
Well, you guys do amazing content. And I really thought about asking if you could open up with hello, Marvel Car community, but I didn't want to upset Jeff with that. Do you guys practice that at all? Do you like walk through the halls saying hello in that fashion?
So we do try to keep it, his shtick per se.
Right.
So we did have a funny video, this is sports card investor video that we had that was sort of a spoof on that, where Jeff is, yelling hello during the meetings and during our videographers. So we like for him to keep that, and we don't necessarily like to steal his thunder in that sense.
It's one of those things. I think they call it like a not an audio brand. There's a better word for it. Do you know what it's I can't think of it, but it's interesting because it, like with my own personal channel, I just started out with saying, "Hey, have a marvelous day," and like that's just become so natural to me, and that's really my desire. Of course, it ties into Marvel, and then sure enough, now that's kind of my Sonic brand. I think is what they call it. So I think it's important that he holds on to that does remember to be his. Oh, the chats are blowing up. We got a lot of people here. Some people want you to call yourself Hammer Pants.
Hammer pants.
There we go. MC
So
Hammer Pants.
I need to get the MC Hammer pants. I guess that's
Yeah, and
what
you
I'll
got to be
have to
able to
do.
do that dance, side to side. That'd be fun.
I think I could do the dance. It might be hard to find the right size pants. I'm about 6'3", and as my dad would say, I have to wear boots in the shower, or I have to wear boots in the shower so I don't fall down the drain, since I'm of a slender boy per se. So,
Whatever.
but
Come
I'll,
on.
I'll definitely have to put that in the backlog to maybe have to wear it to a potential show or maybe the national.
If you pull it off, that'd be great. So we got Ian Fisher here. I don't know if you know who Mr. Ian is on Instagram. He's Cards and Metal, and he is known as the guy who sold the green Spider-Man PMG for $34,000 back in May. That really started that Marvel boom, especially in the precious metal gems world. He sold his cards on Golden Auction, if you remember that. So we got some big time Marvel card guys here. Oh, we got Papa Juju. That's my dad, Leon. He's here. What's up? We got
Hey,
Teapot. That seems like one of your guys.
yeah, that's our VP, one of our VPs, Mr. Tyler Nethercott.
Oh yes, Teapot. It looks better when it's spelled T dash pot than when I hear it Teapot. So
And shout out to Teapot as well. He's another guy on our SCI team who also is a fan of Marvel, and he's been instrumental and sort of us, having dialogue in the office about how the card market's going, as well as the shows and the movies and things like that. So I'm really happy to see that he's joining today.
well, that is awesome. He had an incredible video that was really about the history of precious metal gems and why he felt like Kaboom was not the next precious metal gems, right? And so to me, I thought that was really, really, really cool. And I learned a lot from it. And it correlated into some degree to the Marvel car space because obviously we have the precious metal gems. And it made me think about what is the Kaboom of Marvel cards. And I think it's the Royal Foils from the 2017 Spider-Man Flare Ultra set. They're beautiful. They have similar foiling. They have numbering. They have beautiful artwork. Now the Kabooms, are they numbered as well? In the sports card?
So the booms, they have numbered versions. So for example, for the football release, they have, I believe, they have a gold number to 10, and then
Mhm.
they have a green 1 of 1, I believe. So, and then the rest are not. So some of
Wow.
the trend has been, some collectors have noticed that they have printed more of the regular kabooms. So now some collectors for this year are starting to try to go after the gold and the green, since those are serial numbered.
Yeah, that makes sense. Do we know what the print run is on the non-numbered kabooms by chance?
So prior to this year, it used to be what we call a case hit, so one per case.
Mhm.
From some collectors that I've talked to that have ripped, I've actually heard otherwise, that sometimes it's more than one. So that's where you might start to see folks start to gravitate toward the numbered one, since they're noticing, hey, maybe they're maybe adding an extra one or two per case now. I also believe the checklist is also a bit larger now as well, which could
Yeah,
contribute to
that
that.
makes sense. And so you have the green, the gold, and then the only other parallel is the base kaboom. Is that right?
Yes, and that's the the silver one, which was the case hit.
Okay. All right. I just had to learn that real quick. I appreciate that. I know that was sports cards related, but yeah, we got a lot going on. Let's see here. I'm trying to read these pretty quick. Everyone is dabbling Marvel cards. Obviously, it's the hot button right now. Definitely don't want to see it going anywhere. So I tell people what my dad taught me growing up: once for fun, twice for life. So with Marvel cards, you used the word dabble earlier, and I'm like, man, you dabble once, but that second time, it kind of hooks you in, and it's a unique animal, I think, in the way that it attracts people. Right before I jumped on, I had someone very much from the sports card world say, "Hey, can you help me find this particular Marvel card with pretty good detail?" So I'm like, man, these people are studying it, they're getting to know it, and they're chasing it. And to me, that speaks to that once for fun, twice for life.
Yeah, totally. And I remember, after Avengers Endgame came out, there was a bit of a hiatus in terms of Marvel Studios content.
Yeah.
And I was saying to myself, I think once they get this train moving again, with how sports cards are reacting, and at the time it was during the pandemic, I think you're going to see that there's going to be a lot of opportunities for people, whether that's for speculative buyers or for people that just want to collect Spider-Man, or somebody like
Mhm.
me who wants to collect Captain America because he's my favorite. So, and some of that seems like it's finally starting to come, to fruition, and even more than I thought in some cases. So I totally agree. I think it turned from dabbling into, actually diving into it, and whether that be based on just the cards or even the community itself, which has blown me away, and in terms
Yeah.
of how friendly and how everybody is positive and cheers each other on.
Yeah, it's a marvelous community. Well, you saw what yesterday PSA put out on their Instagram and Facebook page, and I'm sure other places. I didn't go to their website to check, but they showed a Marvel card like front and center, which I thought was really cool.
Yeah, like, and we've seen it with PSA, and I know we've seen it with Golden Auctions. I know
Mm-hmm.
they made a lot of their PMGs a part of that pop culture, I believe, sort of auction month that they had. So, as well as PWCC. So, seeing that a lot of these other bigger players are coming in, is going to put a smile, at least on my face, because
Yeah.
it shows that people understand that there is a trending market here, based on how, much of the forefront it's becoming with,
Mm-hmm.
Disney Plus and things of that nature.
Oh, it's everywhere. All right, we've got a couple of comments here. Oh, well, I'm going to go to Dave first. Dave said, when are Marvel cards getting added to market movers?
So the date on that is still to be determined, but I have been working tirelessly on building our database with all different cards.
Mm-hmm.
So I can't give you a specific date right now, but as soon as I get the green light, all of you will be the first to know, because I'm going to be extremely excited to be able to track these cards and put them in my collection and have the sales update and have graded, raw. So we're basically taking a lot of what we do with our sports card market movers data tool and applying it to Marvel cards. So definitely keep an eye out, because I know that 2022 is also going to be a big year for Marvel cards and for Marvel Studios in general. So believe
Yeah.
me, it's something I'm extremely looking forward to, to be able to give to myself and the community.
I want to talk about that for just a second because understanding the market or having what I like to call transparency or knowledge is very important in creating confidence, because confidence is one of those big keys for values. If you're looking at this from an investment standpoint, to continually go up. When someone doesn't know something, it causes them to hesitate, right? It causes them to pull back, and maybe there's a good deal and they don't know it's a good deal because they haven't been able to track or have some type of awareness, visibility of what this card has or has not been doing, or what that set or insert or whatever's been doing. So with the technology that you have, with being able to compile that data and track it and put it into market movers, to me, is going to be big for Marvel cards. Because right now, unless you have in-depth knowledge, you're ingrained into the community and you know who to ask, it's kind of hard to find, because eBay sales, individual one-off sales, is not a really good way to determine what to pay for a card.
Yeah, and that's where we're being able to educate collectors is what the main key is, to be able to make their own decisions on what maybe they think is the best. Obviously, it always comes down to what's your reasoning. Are you looking to profit? Are you more of an investor? Or are you more of a collector? Coming from the sports card space,
Mhm.
it's majority speculative. It's most people
Right.
trying to chase that next big player, or maybe potential team getting multiple guys, because that team might be on the rise. So I think that's one aspect that's starting to grow in Marvel, where they're starting to see all these announcements come out and things like that of potential characters or new artists that are working on particular things that could cause more of the speculative buys, which is where tools like market movers are great to give you more insight or more confidence in potentially making a purchase. So, but yeah, with eBay, you have certain times where you're not too sure if it was paid, or you have best offer situations as
Yeah.
well. So I know somebody like myself, who's using market movers for sports cards. I'm also utilizing our feature that's called Chart Other Card, where I'm able to at least get those eBay sales into a
Mhm.
graph,
Oh,
and have
wow.
an idea, at least to be able to have a visual to see how some of those cards are potentially doing. Like you said, compared to necessarily scrolling, or only being able to find one sale and not
Mhm.
necessarily knowing that was paid for, or if it was a best offer, which in most cases it doesn't show. But
Yeah.
from a market mover standpoint, it's going to be tremendous, because with what I'm trying to focus on is the quantity. I want to make sure that there is a lot, because I know that there's a lot of different areas of collecting. I know there's a lot of folks that like to go after the Marvel Universe graded stuff. I know there's a lot of folks that like to go after the Fleer retros and the Fleer ultras. There's also folks that like to go after Marvel masterpieces. So, you know, I'm understanding that we're very, very early in this compared to maybe where sports cards are and some of that data already being there. I
Mhm.
mean, I can wake up in the morning and go right to my collection and see how much one of my particular cards sold for. So to be able to have that functionality and that option the week Spider-Man No Way Home drops to see how your Spider-Man cards are doing
Yeah.
is something that I think will be pretty interesting.
No, I agree. And to have that visual in front of you, I think is important because price is a fact. Value is an opinion. And to be able to understand value requires as many facts as possible that you can put in some type of computation to create, whether it's a sales comparison approach or whatever, to understand, what that card may be worth now and maybe where it's headed. And when you think about Marvel cards as a property, as in terms of like pop culture, you see your, I'll say, 35 to 45-year-old, time frames, right? Of people who are now buying their childhood. Long story short, you're buying your childhood. I tell people all the time, I can finally afford to be the kid I always wanted to be, right? Marvel cards is very much in the childhood of the current generation, right? And have been, we'll just go back to Iron Man, right? So was that 2012, 2011, 10, whatever? I can't
Might
remember.
have been 2008, but don't quote me
Yeah.
on that.
Well, I mean,
It's around that realm.
it's getting a long time ago. And so it's been with these childhood generations. So we can possibly speculate that 20 years from now, that generation is still going to want to be buying vintage Marvel cards, right? And that's what we're opening today, and that's what we opened last year and the year before. So I think Marvel cards has a bright future ahead of it. It hasn't reached critical mass by any stretch of the imagination, but having conversations with guys like you who are very prominent in the trading card industry is getting it to critical mass, and that's why you're seeing 5-digit sales on Marvel cards, which is incredible. Okay, we sorry, we got a ton of comments here.
Hey, it's my guy Phil. He's one of our video guys over at Sports Card Investor. So also a huge Marvel fan, and he's actually worked on set on some Marvel films and some Marvel shows like Hawkeye to be one for example. So super happy
Wow.
that he was able to take some time out today to tune in. Shout
Phil,
out to my
thank
guy
you.
Phil.
Yeah, a lot of movies are being recorded in Georgia, right?
Yes, in Atlanta, I've driven by some of the places that they've shot, and I know Black Panther one, the building in the beginning where the kids are playing basketball, and it's
Mhm.
the apartment scene. That building isn't very far from where I live. Some of
Wow.
the Civil War uh, shots, I believe, when Black Panther is fighting with Winter Soldier, I think, and
Mhm.
Captain America. Some of those were shot in some of the parking garages that aren't very far from here. So yes, when I moved here to start this journey with Jeff, I was very thrilled to see that at least a lot of filming and a lot of Marvel related stuff is going around the city.
That is awesome. All right, so Ian says royal foils for the win. Kaboom, kaboom. I love it. I love it. And so Teapot's out shopping. Do you need him to pick you up anything while he's out at the grocery store?
No, I think I'm all set. I still have a lot of leftovers from Christmas dinner, so uh, I think I'm good in that regard. But he is the ultimate multitasker, so I give him the utmost credit for being able to be able to do multiple things like that.
Yeah. Awesome, awesome. So we got a comment here from Marvel Guy. Do you think fanatics will get involved in Marvel cards?
Yeah, so that's something that I've been, keeping an eye out, whether it's industry news or things of that nature. I don't see why they would not want to, based on, like we've talked about, a lot of these recent sales and things like that. But
Mhm.
I could also imagine Upper Deck Entertainment is also, may have something to say about it. But, when this all started, I was under the impression that Fanatics would probably buy out Upper Deck. So
Mhm.
then they would get the hockey licenses as well as a lot of the entertainment license. But that ended up not being the case, I believe. So
Right.
at this point, I'm not really too sure. If I was in their shoes, I, I would say, yeah, try to go after it. But,
Mhm.
I think Upper Deck understands what they also have at this point. Because, you know, there's not, compared to sports cards, there's very little releases
Hmm.
And I'm hopeful that Upper Deck is understanding of that and going to potentially create more products out there so collectors like us can have more options to rip. Now, I'm not insinuating that they, let out the printing presses, but at
Yeah.
least give more of a variety, because people like us who've been waiting for Spider-Man, metal, are just kind of salivating at the mouth until we have that opportunity.
Hmm.
So, but that's what I think. I'm keeping an eye out and waiting to see if there's any news in that regard, with Fanatics potentially dabbling into the non-sports, trading card section.
Yeah, so my biggest concern for the future of Marvel cards is availability of product, the amount of it, and the access to it. And one thing I really loved about the interview that you guys had with what's the name of the leader of Fanatics right now? Tell me his name again.
I think Josh Luber you might be
Josh
mentioning.
Luber. Yeah, y'all
Yeah.
had an interview with him and Jeff, and he talked about creating a frictionless transaction. Basically, where when you're ready for a card, you can get it in your hands. You can get it digitally, then mailed to you, whatever, but creating as little friction as possible. What I really loved about that is because when someone has access to the card, then they get to decide how they want to build a community around it or build, a hobby or process around it. And so I think he has this vision of, if I can get the cards into people's hands, then the local hobby shop doesn't become as much about getting product to the consumer, but actually about creating, this experience. And I'll keep using the word community, it's just the right word, around the hobby and around the card. You see what I'm saying? And I don't want Marvel cards to miss that, where it's just difficult to get it. You mentioned when we were backstage, blowout cards, and I mentioned David Adams. Almost no one knows that outside of Marvel cards, like where to go to get them and how to access them. They don't understand EPAC yet. So I think Upper Deck, to keep up, will need to have a little bit of that frictionless uh, transaction mindset into the future.
Yeah, and you may be able to speak about their platform more than myself, but from a sports card, perspective, I find that absolutely genius. Now that might not, I think there's some tweaks that they could do on their interface, but the fact that you're able to open those cards and then have them sent is something that to me is really awesome, compared to maybe Panini or Tops that are maybe just doing digital cards, but not something where, you can open up the same the same product
Mhm.
as, a metal Spider-Man metal, and be able to pull a particular big hit and then have it sent to you.
Mhm.
Now, hockey isn't as big as the other three sports, but Upper Deck does that for hockey, which I know people enjoy a lot. So I I think that they do have something there that necessarily a lot of the big sports card guys might, or companies might not have implemented yet. So if they do keep, you know, being involved with Marvel, I'm excited to see, that aspect of it,
Yeah, I don't
because
see.
it's really cool.
Yeah, EPAC's not going away by any stretch. It's probably the most valuable part of Upper Deck in a lot of ways, outside of their licenses, in the way in which it's a lot of fun. It's not physically opening up cards, but they have created a way that you're having an experience while opening it. It's a little close to gambling, so you need to be really careful, and that's a cautionary tale that we can share with people. But at the same time, it is a really fun way to get access to cards when you want to until the product sells out. So Teapot here says early kabooms were super low population, newer ones not so much. The new golds are like the OG regular kabooms. So that was part of our conversation earlier. What year would you say that started to change, where he's using newer and old OG older ones? Do you know what year that kind of transitioned?
So T-Power would probably be able to speak more on that than myself. But from what I noticed and from what I talked to people at Collectors Con, this year is where they're starting to go for more of the gold, and that being, the standard, since more have been getting printed each year. I do know that I'm not familiar with what the first year was, but the first year kabooms were more like cartoon ish. They look
Mm,
more like illustrations than now, which it almost looks like the actual player. So
okay. Now that you say that, I think I have seen some of those. So we got Scandell in the house. He's a big collector of the 1992, um, well, the Uncanny X-Men. I'll show you. So he's a big collector of this set because it has the potential. Let me see if I can get my finger here of autograph cards by Jim Lee. And just because I'm aware of some of our private conversations, you love autograph cards, right?
Oh yes, totally.
And so, have you been eyeballing those in the Marvel card space? You see that as a good place to be putting some of your dollars at?
Yeah. So from an easy investment or a low risk buy, obviously Stan Lee,
Hmm.
autos, whether they're sticker or on card. I know most people would rather have the on card, but you know his stock, in my opinion, isn't going anywhere. I mean, he's the GOAT of Marvel. So I
Yeah.
think, you know, topped with the fact that he's no longer with us, unfortunately, means he's not signing anymore, which is only going to make the population of his particular autograph cards, not go up. So from that aspect of it, going after those guys like Stan Lee, Jim Lee, some of these goats per se or founding
Hmm.
fathers, I think are shoe-ins per se. It would be similar to maybe somebody going after Michael Jordan or Babe Ruth or Wilt Chamberlain, just guys that have had impacts that are going to be everlasting, you know. So, but then you have a whole nother side, which you get into some of the actor autographs, which I
Hmm.
think you can start to get more into speculative buying. So, an example would be, Tom Holland's cards a year or two ago. Some of his autographed cards were only going for a couple $100, two,
Hmm.
$300, if that. And I remember almost pulling the trigger on a few, but unfortunately ended up not doing that. And now, a lot of the Black Diamond numbered stuff is
Yeah.
into the numbered autos or into the thousands, you know. But then you can look at other speculative buys where obviously he's the main character, but then you could have somebody like his best friend Ned, who, you know, um, his autograph prior to the movie release, Spider-Man 3, it was going for about $15.
Hmm.
Now they've about doubled. So based off what people saw in the movie, they figured maybe it's time to go buy him, because maybe there'd be more screen time for him down the road,
Yeah.
without getting into too much of spoilers or details right now. But that's an example with the autographs, whether it be, people like Stan Lee or some of the main illustrator guys, or, you know, getting into the actors where,
Mhm.
you can try to maybe go after some of the non big guys who might end up going to screen stardom. Another example I can give you is Elizabeth Olsen autographs, Scarlet Witch. They were going, her Avengers Infinity War autographs were going for only like $50. Now I think they're, multiple hundreds of
Yeah.
dollars because of WandaVision and now what
She's just
potentially.
really grown as a character and an actor in Avengers. And unless you were like really deep into comic books and understood her story arc, you didn't really see that coming.
Totally. And, that's where people would, told me, wink, wink, Doctor Strange 2, wink, wink,
Yeah.
that could be an opportunity. And based on what the market is telling me, is it's clearly causing more popularity, knowing that they just had something come out and, what's next potentially. So, but yeah, I, we could have a 5-hour TED talk on some of this stuff because it's just there's so much that you can dive into. Somebody like me who's more into the movies and films,
Right.
and then there's other collectors who were used to the shows growing up, like in your age group, as well as
Mhm.
folks who are just remembering the comics. So with that, just brings so many different opportunities.
Yeah, and it really can decide how you want to collect, which is, obviously one of the great things about Marvel cards is you can be a set collector, a character collector, you can chase inserts, you can do, they have the MCU side of things, which I think has a lot of appeal for people who are not into the comic books or into the animated series growing up because it's what they're seeing on the big screen and the idea of that actor holding that card or that sticker and signing it, right? And so it's just to me, there's just so much depth in terms of how eclectic you want to be or specific and focused you want to be as a Marvel card collector. And I'll just point back to market movers, and this is why I think that's so important for Marvel cards because maybe I thought I wanted a Tom Holland right before the movie came out, and I'm seeing what those selling for, and I look down and go, "Hey, Ned is not selling for that much. This is a really good time to buy him." and but you maybe didn't even think about that because you didn't have that. It wasn't in front of you, right? You didn't have that visual where you could see, hey, here's where he's at. Here's where Tom Holland's at. Here's where he may go. And I think, hopefully market mover sooner rather than later, but love it. Okay. So we got Teapot giving us that information we were asking for. 2018 was the boom in kabooms and Panini Rewards, also when the golds were introduced. Very cool. Marvel Guy says, we need flawless cards, on-card autos for Marvel. That would be amazing. I've heard of flawless. I don't know a lot about it. How would you say it's different from the type of inserts we have now for Marvel?
Well, flawless might be, I think it's a particular set that he's talking about, which is similar to National Treasures, which is like, I would say, a step or two, maybe 3 steps above Upper Deck Black Diamond, which was considered a high-end Marvel set.
Did you say 3 sets above?
Yeah, I mean, you're talking, because what, that came out at what? How much did
around 300 or so?
Around 300. So some of these boxes we're talking into the thousands. So what I think he's insinuating is, and I could be wrong, is, are there going to be really big time releases like that can have, really tremendous on-card auto cut signatures, things of that nature that are extremely sought after and expensive to go after if you're somebody who's like a particular breaker.
You used a term that I'm not familiar with, cut signature. What is that?
So that is something where, so like for Stan Lee now, if they wanted to put his autograph card in a 2021 product, they would have to essentially cut a piece of certified, something that was certified and autographed by Stan Lee, which they will purchase and then cut and then put into the card. So similar to comic cuts, which I think Marvel card collectors are more aware of, which is the same concept.
Yeah, I think
but it's just of an autograph.
Yeah, I have some of those right there. Not going to waste any time, but yeah, so it's truly a Stan Lee auto. It just wasn't on that card. It was on something else. They bought it. Maybe it was a poster. Maybe it was a sheet of paper. Who knows? Whatever, right? And then they put it in there. That is fascinating.
Yes, and it's something that's relatively big in in a lot of sports.
Wow.
Yeah, go ahead.
Well, I'm just the possibilities there. I mean, that stuff could get incredibly expensive. We're talking about new holy grails with something like that.
So one example is, rest in peace, John Madden, the famous football, coach, broadcaster, and video game connoisseur. He passed away last night, but like one of his cut signatures was purchased last night, so that's just an example of where somebody probably researched John Madden autograph cards and went, he really doesn't have much. So let me get this now since it's, it's certified by the card company and it's legitimate, in that sense. So that's just an example of where somebody might go after a cut auto because they probably imagine to themselves, he probably hasn't done much signing in that sense. So yeah, it's extremely fascinating. I think there's a lot that can be done in that regard for Marvel cards.
Upper Deck, I hope you're listening. This is great stuff. Dave says he's been buying many cards with artist signatures of the comic artists that he really admires. Walt Simonson, Mark Bagley, Matt Fraction, and Stuart. I actually went out and bought a Donny Cates because he's probably one of the biggest creators in Marvel Comics right now. And it's his first time he has an on-card auto in comics. I got it for like $15. Couldn't believe it. Uh-oh. We have arrived, Hammer. Neo's here. Love it.
Hey, there he is.
Dre. You know what, Dre? Whatever. Dre. Yeah, I heard it. I didn't react to him saying your age group, but yes, I heard it. No, it was good stuff. And then let's see. Yeah, Marvel Guy says, he's looking for high-end Marvel product.
So obviously Black Diamond's the only one I would say right now for the actor
related. There's an exquisite. Oh, for actor related. Yeah,
for the but if he's in, so I know you were saying exquisite is a non-MCU one that might be, because obviously in the sports world, exquisite was absolutely huge when I was growing up and was was a staple for a lot of high-end collectors.
Yeah, so you have a set called Marvel Gems, which is a female dominant set that opens up, I think, a lot like Exquisite does in sports, where you got 2 packs in one box. You got 6 cards, and then you got 1 card. Yeah, I believe it's one, maybe 2 cards in the 1 pack. I can't remember. I've opened up like 3 of the boxes, but I can't remember. And you get, this higher end set. And I think it in the Marvel card space, it's actually been undervalued. But it's kind of tough because boxes are either big hits or kind of a dud. So I think that's part of it. But
Yes, I
so,
believe I've seen the exquisite ones of those, because it's obviously, an animated version or just an
mhm.
illustration of the character, and they've seemed to be catching some steam as well, because I think that brand name on there is huge.
Yeah. Well, they have something called jambalayas in them. They're just like jambalayas.
Yep.
They have a gem cut rather than an oval cut, and they're really nice. And then they have something called nameplates where they're numbered out of 10. So it's an actual metal plate with an engraving of that character's name, but it's a comic image. Actually pulled one of those, sold it for $535, used that money to buy a green PMG before the big boom. Yeah, so we got Elusive. So for those who don't know, we have a podcast called Marvel's Pack Fresh Podcast, and Elusive is one of the hosts of that, and he's got a great YouTube channel as well. Been putting out some good content. Yeah, use patches with autos for movies, sticker autos rather than on card. I guess he's probably referring to something else we talked about. And then, so Dre is bringing up a good point. He is talking about the high end set called Premiere. I don't know what the equivalent of that would be for sports cards, but it's a thick card stock with, it's a really high end sketch card set too. I mean, they go all out. So not only do you have your regular sketch cards, but you have these like 5x6s that can come in them in these tins. They're really high end. And then of course masterpieces. Yeah, I'm kind of reluctant to talk about masterpieces because there's still so many of those cards that I want to acquire. But I think that as well, I'll use the mass, like the critical mass of people coming into Marvel cards. Once they get past what they know already from an insert standpoint, they're going to look at the art. You know what I mean? They're gonna gravitate towards PMGs, towards EX entries, towards jambalayas because they know it, they're familiar with it, and number cards, right, for sure. And then they're going to start paying attention to that art, and then that's when Marvel Masterpieces is going to come into focus, and they're just going to be hard to get because you're talking about the base card is numbered to 1999, and then you have tiers from there that go to 14.99, 9.99, 4.99, 99, and then 10 and 1. So it's with really high end art and artists, and I think that's going to be one of the bigger sets down the road.
Yeah, and I think it's fascinating from a sports card collector's standpoint, where that's maybe not something that's a much of an attraction. But
Mm-hmm.
I think as people do dive in, they are going to realize that the art is really beautiful and one of a kind, and it's no different in my eyes than some of these beautiful inserts that are made in sports, where it's the same concept. You love how the insert looks, and to me, in most cases, it's not much different. If you love how this particular year of Marvel Masterpieces or Marvel Universe
Mm-hmm.
looks.
Well, you have it on your wall. You got Michael Jordan, skying up for a dunk in his rookie card. It was really important that rookie card looked like a piece of art in terms of why it means what it means to the hobby. And, not to get into a rant about Jordan, but, beyond the actual outcomes of his career in terms of championships and MVPs, he was artistic in the way that he scored, right? And that's why, I point to Kobe and then now Steph Curry as being, transcendent because there is an artistic way in which they approach the game that then shows up on the card. Think of Vince Carter a little bit there too. So as I'm sure that has an impact on the sports card community. I know it would for me if I was chasing those cards. And so when you move into Marvel cards, the art becomes really important. And it's hard to look at a Marvel masterpiece, set and not walk away for the vast majority of the cards. Not every one of them, but the vast majority, and go, wow, this art is really important. So we got so Dre says there's double, triples, and quads of the 5x7. So you take 5x7, double it, triple it, and quad it, and that's how you get to the sizes. No, Marvelous Packs, we're going to continue to educate. We're not going to hold back, even though it might cost us a few cards. Teapot says, I am wanting to see if some of the other inserts from Flair Retro was sore, including Intimidation Nation. And he mentions that primarily because that's a sports insert. Is that right, Hammer?
Yes. So, and that's something I've been keeping an eye on too, to see if, if there's going to be other, Fleer Retro cards that are going to pick up steam. Now, I've noticed some of the Intimidation Nations have, I believe there's a Deadpool one on eBay right now that's at about $100. I don't know how many days are left, but there's definitely people that are starting to buy, just like the Metal Blasters, the non-PMG versions, like the Spider-Man ones I've seen. People are asking $200-$300 a piece, where those were $5 cards at one point in time, $10 cards. So I think people are naturally, at least in terms of the non-PMG Metal Blasters, are just seeing the trickle down effect to try to get more. Now the other inserts, like Intimidation Nation, I know there's a couple other ones that I'm not remembering off the top of my head.
Stars, what is it called?
Yeah, so Star Supreme. Yeah. That's one where you could still find some for relatively cheap. I know the Star Power Supreme was a really popular 90s insert for basketball. So that really hasn't necessarily taken off all that much. But
Teapot,
you also have some of
Strike.
the...
Man, I was chasing the Quick Strike Spider-Man. I got outbid on 3 different ones back to back to back. I was so upset. And by outbid, I mean like by $5 on each one. I put in my max bid, boom, $5 more, boom, $5 more.
Yeah, which is fascinating. And I also think some of the throwback from I think it's the Marvel Universe sets, where they'll have the 1990, 90. A lot of the Spider-Man ones I've seen, people are buying those because they're short prints. So that's something to keep in mind too. I can't think of of the one insert name. It might be Flashers, but they have one of Moon Knight, and they also have one of Spider-Man. And it's like a crotch shot of Spider-Man. But that's an example where some people might not be looking at print runs and stuff like that. The quick strikes have picking up steam, but those actually have it's easier to pull that than this particular. I think it may be the Power Blaster is the one I'm talking about.
Something like that.
Those pack odds are a lot rare. So I think there's a Spider-Man one that's at about $100 in auction right now. But that's just an example of where sports people will go to the checklist and go and look, okay, let's see these pack odds. Let's see why, maybe some of these prices are going for what they're going for. And at least with Marvel, I'm understanding that sometimes it is based on the art, and that's just why it's going to go for more. Pack odds might not necessarily be the main benefactor as somebody wanting, or the main reason why they want to buy it. Because I agree with it. The quick strikes are beautiful. Really I had my eye on some Moon Knight ones that sold, and just haven't had a chance to get one. Despite a lot of the big names are out of reach. But yeah, I definitely think a lot of folks, whether it's them seeing a lot of the PMG buzz, or just fans, sports collectors that are diving into this arena, are starting to try to pick up some of those other inserts.
I think it would be such a huge service to the Marvel car community and bridge over to the sports car community if you and Teapot did, a video series or one video, Hammer Time video where you talk about here, what are inserts in sports cards that are also in Marvel cards, and why are they important? Because for instance, EX Century, I heard Teapot say, might be his favorite sports card insert of all time. And EX entries are really, really low value compared to some of the other inserts right now. And I'd be curious, because if I'm a Marvel card guy and I'm holding a stack of EX entries, I may not want to sell those cheap right now, because there may be a flood of buyers who are familiar with that set in the future that might really value it.
Definitely. And I know that there's some numbered versions as well, which seem to be flying off. Which seem to be flying off, from what I've seen, seem to be flying off the shelf more per se than some of the normal EX. just regular ones. Now I don't know the pack odds behind that, but yeah, I think a lot of those sports related inserts, whether it's people from the sports card world or from the Marvel card world, I think are going to continue to get attention. And for those who might not know, Fleer Retro was a sports product as well. So, but most of it was with guys in their college uniforms.
Yeah.
So, but that's just an example where there are sports collectors who might not have a single Marvel card who go, okay, Fleer Retro. So they're going to have those, a lot of those crazy inserts like the Jambalayas and the PMGs and the Quick Strikes. So, in the Intimidation Nations.
I think I got an idea. I think I'm going to commission a sketch card of Spider-Man in the Michael Jordan dunk pose, wearing a jersey. I think that's going to be really, I think that, or Miles Morales, one or the other. I think that'll look really good. Look, we got Elusive coming here with the knowledge.
That's what it was.
Power Blast, Ultra Stars, EX Entries. Yeah. So those guys, they know what they're talking about. They really should be hosting this show. I'm just being the face here. Marvelous says it's tough because there's so many short print run sets and cards out there with so many new collectors with less available big characters. And yeah, I like that too. What did Marvel guys say? Oh, here we go. Or what inserts can Marvel cards incorporate in the future that would be successful? Yeah, that sounds like a lot of fun.
Yeah, so that's really interesting. I mean, I before Teapot came on and we started talking about kabooms, that was always something that I thought would be cool since it's
with all that
it's almost
color.
Yeah, and I mean, to me, I get the comic book vibes and a reference with the kaboom. So I think that would be something that would be really, really cool, and that they could play a lot with, like play around a lot with. But I think where they're doing well is going with a lot of the '90s inserts, because just the art from that time is just absolutely beautiful. I mean, you have Downtowns, which is another well-known in rare pull insert where it'll have the Philadelphia Eagles quarterback, and it'll have the art, the famous art museum where Rocky runs up the stairs. It'll have a cheesesteak in the background, represent Philadelphia. So like, I think those could be really cool if you did like a Captain America with sort of like Brooklyn, in the background or something of that nature, or Thanos on Titan or something like that. So like, that's something where I think that they could really do a good job incorporating, some of the popular sports card inserts that are out there.
Yeah, well, let's take a look at Spider-Man Metal, because there are some new inserts here that have a sports card background, and I'm trying to get to it specifically right here with what is it? The Z-Force. That's what I'm trying to say.
Yes, the Z-Force Rave and Super Rave, which were really popular in the '90s for basketball.
So when you say really popular, I remember Z-Force because that was right around the time of Kobe Bryant's rookie year and Allen Iverson's rookie year, if I remember correctly.
Yeah, so it was right around. We actually did a box break of this some point earlier in the year of the basketball box we did with Jeff. But yeah, so I believe that the Rave is one level of rarity, and then the Super Rave is another level of rarity. Now, where I also notice is they have something called Amazing Rave and Gold Rave parallels, which I'm not necessarily familiar if those are in sports products, but I like the fact that they're adding, a gold variation and maybe another super rare variation to add. So from the standpoint of rarity, I was curious to see what the pack odds are on that. They obviously haven't disclosed any of that information yet, but this gives me an idea or a thought that obviously they're okay with going down the rabbit hole of pulling more of these particular '90s rare inserts, into the Marvel world.
Yeah, I think anything that Skybox put out in the '90s from an insert is going to end up in a Marvel insert at some point. Within reason. But to me, this is Z-Force is just such a slam dunk. What I'm curious about Z-Force is what the two images they give us here. First of all, let's be real. What they put on the sell sheet doesn't always show up in the box. We learned that with X-Men Metal. They showed us a beautiful Rogue Planet Metal that never showed up. The box art never showed up in the set. So who knows what's really going to end up on these Z-Force cards. But here you have kind of a modern villain set. You have the modern Doc Ock, and you have the new kind of Donny Cates Carnage symbiote minion. Really, it's not actually Carnage as we know him, because he has that swirl on his forehead. Now, a lot of people are not into the comic books are not going to realize that, but if they don't have the big characters as people know them, I'd be curious how well they're going to do. But still a really cool set. Hopefully they'll be obviously numbered, or maybe just short. No, here it does say Super Rave, Amazing Rave, and Gold Rave parallels all feature limited numbering.
Which is great to see, because at least in the 90s, just to give some background, they start to make these rare inserts and put out this information with a lot of the junk wax era aftermath. So
Ian says it's going to be a 1-of-1, which is awesome.
Oh, that's even better. So, and that's where they didn't have those before. They would just have the pack odds, which would be crazy odds to pull. So then, that was enough to know it's not numbered, but it's 1 in 3,000 packs, or 1 in 1,000 packs, or something of that nature. So the fact that they're adding the 1-of-1, and I'll be curious to see, the gold might be numbered to what, maybe 5 or 10. I'm not familiar with what the gold. Gold variation.
I think it's just going to be different. Gold is typically
it might not even be numbered.
But in this, it's going to be Super Rave is 1-of-1, where gold is just a parallel that's really available in X-Men Metal, not a 1-of-1, and a purple was the 1-of-1. So they're not really following a set formula with that, from what I understand. And yeah, look, these guys coming to help me out here. Platinum Portraits, obvious. 90s insert that's in X-Men Metal right now, and will be in this set as well. I think I can pull one up here.
Yeah, I'll definitely be keeping an eye, on the Platinum Portraits. The first thing I'm going to do when the set list comes out, or the checklist, is to see who is on it outside of obviously Spider-Man. But that's one of the big chases for 90s basketball. So they're just beautiful cards. I love the little stencil that creates, almost little dots that create the image. So I'm going to be keeping an eye to see what those go for out the gate, and kind of see where they settle, because at least from what I've seen with X-Men, there hasn't been all that many that have necessarily hit the market, or at least not of the big characters per se.
We're thinking about 30 in that print run, with the way Spider-Man Metal seems to be numbered out in, if you're using that as a scale, I would say there's probably going to be 50 of the Spider-Man Metal, would be my just out the gate guess. Maybe I'm way wrong on that. I don't know. I'm sure it's still going to be a case hit. But to hit a Spider-Man Platinum Portrait, to me, is, I would just absolutely love to hit that. I've got one Platinum Portrait of Dark Phoenix, and those cards in hand look so much better than they do, with the stock image here.
Yeah, and I'm also looking forward to the comic cuts. I know that I think Amazing Fantasy 15 is going to have a comic cut in there.
Yeah, I'm going to here it is.
Yeah, as well as some others, but that to me is really awesome. Just coming from talking about those cut signatures, old stuff like this, I find it extremely fascinating that they're going to be able to put a very well-known comic like this.
Yeah,
I believe it's his first appearance, if I'm not mistaken.
Very much.
So I'm going to be curious to see where that's going to land price-wise once one does hit the market.
So Amazing Fantasy literally changed comics, because obviously it introduced us to Peter Parker Spider-Man in his very first appearance. But to hear Stan Lee tell the story of how he wrote it, he was basically writing the story basically as he was going to exit the comic industry and do it without any regard to the comic code that was in place in the time. And he came up with this really troubled story of a kid without a mom and dad around, and his uncle dies who adopted him. And then he goes to, attack the guy who killed his uncle. That story, for someone who was a child as a superhero, was kind of breaking the rules. And of course it did really, really well. That's why That's why it's inside of Amazing Fantasy 15 and not Spider-Man number 1. Spider-Man number 1 is not Spider-Man's first appearance. So then you couple that with the fact that Spider-Man number 1, a 9.6, just sold for over $3 million.
Oh, wow.
And so they took that comic book and cut it up and put it in this set. And so I will probably never have an Amazing Fantasy 15. It's out of reach, but I might be able to get one of these comic cuts with, a really special panel in a very cool set of X-Men Metal. I think it's going to be huge.
Totally, and that's exactly the train of thought. Most people and collectors aren't going to be able to get the whole comic. So, and that's somebody like me who I'd love to get a comic cut of Captain America 1, but there just isn't none of these, no company's willing to do that with what those
Right.
are going for. But at least seeing that they're open to doing stuff like this, to me, is really exciting, because you are getting a piece of history. And then obviously, if the individual cut is something unique or something, that
Yeah.
really stands out, then that obviously adds an extra layer
Yeah.
of excitement around the card.
What if you get Parker putting on the mask for the first time?
Exactly. Now, I will say, if I was working at Upper Deck, there's
Yeah.
no way I could have been in the room when they were cutting that thing apart, because, like you said, for what it's going for. But it's really great to see, though, that they're starting to implement some of these ideas like this, because it really is a piece of history and something that most people wouldn't be able to have.
Yeah, for sure. So, Dave, going back to, and I'm a little behind on comments, guys. I apologize for having such a great chat. Globally, there has to be many Marvel fans with comics, TVs, movies, and sports. We just need more card collectors for this thing to really boom. And look, the people who've been listening to me for a while have heard me say, if we get 1,000 more active daily collectors in Marvel card, it's going to get insane. There's probably, if I had to put my finger on the pulse of daily Marvel card collectors, we're 5,000-6,000 of us around the world. That's nothing. that's literally nothing. I think you and I talked about it. There's about 3 million active daily collectors of sports cards. Is that kind of the number you guys have put on that in the United States?
I think so. I don't necessarily want you to quote me on that,
No.
but yeah, obviously it's the difference is overwhelming.
Yeah.
But I'm very, very hopeful that, with more data being, put around Marvel cards and things like that. And speaking from just the speculative world and people who are trying to find the next big guy in sports cards, I think that that's only going to grow with the amount of content that Marvel Studios is putting out, which
Yeah.
just is going to bring more excitement. I mean, I was so thrilled to be able to go see, Spider-Man No Way Home, and then come home and look at the different cards I have, of his, which is something that's maybe a bit different compared to sports, where, you're watching a game here and there. There's an off season and things like that. So I do think people are in the sports world will start to see more opportunities and come in, because there might not be as many opportunities as there once was in sports cards, whether that's flipping, buying for long-term holds,
Mhm.
or just being a collector.
I will say, you just said, off season, where watching Neo's channel and hear him talk about these entry and exit points throughout the year based on the season and, when things are happening, add the playoffs into that, so forth and so on. This year, there was not been an off day for Marvel cards. It really hasn't, because if it's not a new release, it's the new show, right? And it's just been boom, 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 nonstop all year. And some of that was interrupted with still dealing with the pandemic. So I can't imagine if we get back to a place of normality where things are just rolling out all the time. There is no off season for Marvel cards.
That's absolutely correct. There was 9 different projects between the Disney Plus series and movies this year. And I think the number was over 3,000 minutes of content.
Mhm.
So to your point, I really do think this is only the beginning of that market per se, and new characters rising, others exiting. Just character development and arcs start to come into fruition, where you might see things then take off from there. I mean, we've
Mhm.
talked about this. Like, obviously, Thanos wasn't somebody who was considered a top villain in the Marvel world until Josh Brolin was able to voice him and,
Yeah.
bring this character truly to life on the big screen in the last two Avenger movies. So that, I think that there's more room for that sort of stuff to happen
That
where,
well,
there's potential of characters who maybe comic wise weren't all that beloved, but then a big screen spin gets put on them, and then
mhm.
boom, then all of the non-comic MCU lovers who may be collectors then start to dive into those realms.
Well, I think that creates some safety from an investment standpoint because we can look 3 years out and see, within reason what movies are going to be released. And you can look at this history of these characters to see kind of where they fall, historically and go, you know what? I think there's a big increase here that's going to happen with this particular character, whether a hero or a villain, and can create some safety in being able to, quote, invest money. You've mentioned Moon Knight a few times here. There's a reason why you're talking about Moon Knight. And Hammer, if I had to guess, it's not because you read his comic.
Correct.
So
It's obviously because of the Disney Plus show coming out and Oscar Isaac being able to,
killer
take the
actor.
take the realm on that and really, see where it goes. Now, obviously, people inside Marvel Studios know where it's going to go, but I think that's where the speculation of this is going to get really, really fun because with more content, there's more news. I mean, just this week alone, I've seen 3 or 4 different news related things, whether it be actors getting chosen for a particular character, new things that are already in development. I think I read there was 20 plus projects that haven't even been announced yet.
Yeah,
So that
so
just
much
makes
tech.
you really, really happy because, like you said, it's like I just brought my head up after Hawkeye,
Hmm.
series and Spider-Man and Boba Fett comes out today, which is the Star Wars world.
Yeah,
But still, I haven't had a
it's
chance to check to see what show is coming next. But they're clearly getting to the point where movies are going to be on the big screen. They're going to have Disney Plus shows, and it's just gonna just continue to be in the attention span of collectors.
well. Look, I'll just go ahead and call it out. I call Star Wars the sister to Marvel. They have the same parent, right? It's the sister, and a lot of those people who collect Star Wars collect Marvel. And look, I'm going to open this up on the channel here pretty soon because Book of Boba came out. It was a ton of fun. It's a non-sport, and especially with the amount of product that is and isn't available for Marvel, people are going to spill over into Star Wars. It's going to happen. They're too closely related, in my opinion, for
Yeah,
that
and
not to
that's
happen.
and that's where I think Tops is doing a fantastic job with
Hmm.
what they've been able to do with Star Wars. And me being a Marvel lover, hoping that Upper Deck can get to where Tops is with a lot of their Star Wars related releases. I mean, the Galaxy Chrome is one of the best sets uh, at all non-sports sports this year alone is probably one of my favorite sets just based on how beautiful the art on the cards are and the refractors and things like that, which
Yeah, they
baseball
just
collectors
feel
are.
different, even just opening the cards and pulling them apart. Like, I don't know how to explain the way they slide off of each other. It's just such a different feeling.
Yeah, and that's where I'm hopeful that they could maybe start to make a Chrome related product for Marvel at some point because they
Mhm.
don't really have a Chrome related product that's similar to like Galaxy where you can pull these really beautiful refractors but also pull numbered, colored variation refractors as well.
Yeah.
So, but I totally agree with you and in terms of it being, I talk with my father all the time and I say to me this, Marvel is just they're taking what Star Wars was able to build years ago and they're just injecting it with steroids and just putting the pedal
Right.
to the metal. So I don't think this is possible without the impact that Star Wars was able to have
Right. You
on
you
pop
mean they're
culture.
taking someone with mutant genes and injecting it with superhero serum, right?
Exactly. Exactly.
Dave says he's going to get an Aunt May cut. Look, that would be awesome. I would take an Aunt May cut. I would not be mad about it.
I'd be happy with an advertisement cut. I'd be happy
Yeah,
with anything.
that's right. Yeah. Yeah, Aunt May, yeah, amazing fans. He agrees. He agrees.
And it's back to Spider-Man Metal. I would say the one fun card I'm looking at, and
Yeah.
if anybody pulls one, definitely let me know. and if he's on the set, but they show his picture for the shadow box, I believe
Oh,
is the Peter Porker. John Mulaney voiced Peter Porker in the Into the Spider-Verse
oh, there it is.
movie. So, but I believe that there's a picture. It might not be on this particular page, but
Here
that
it is.
has PMGs of him. So that's definitely one fun card. Hopefully, be able to buy if Peter Porker PMG is pulled by somebody once this is
Skyscraper
released.
Shadowbox. Hey, Skyscraper Shadowbox is a sports card insert too, isn't it?
Yeah, I don't know if the particular name is reminiscent of one particular insert, but
Mhm.
I've also seen them in Avengers, like Endgame has shadow boxes. Some of them are even autoed by some of the actors. So because they don't have those in metal, do they? I mean, in X-Men metal, right?
Mm-mm. No, they had the geodes, and I think this is going to be kind of that thicker,
Okay.
you know, type of depth in a card.
Okay. And I did find interesting too that that you have right here is the Daily Bugle, booklet cards.
Hmm.
It makes me wonder kind of what that is going to be about, if it's kind of just, similar to booklet cards and sports cards where it's a nice picture and then a nice patch. I don't
Hmm.
think these are going to be autograph related, but it does make me wonder what the odds are going to be of pulling something like this Daily Bugle, because it is an awesome looking card.
Yeah, and it does say there will be short print versions of them. So very cool. Very cool. Let's get here to what is this came up on my live stream last night. Would you rather have an $80,000 Spider-Man red PMG or an AF-15 of similar value? So an Amazing Fantasy 15 first appearance of Spider-Man is going to be at 80,000, is probably going to be a 5.0, 4.0, 5.0, and 100 times over I would rather have the AF-15.
I would agree with you, and that's somebody who does not own a single comic book
Yeah, I mean, look, there's
yet.
actually yeah,
Yet.
yeah. I have actually really had to do like a lot of mental gymnastics this year of like, what could I sell to go ahead and get a 3.0 of an AF-15? And they were sitting around 25, 30,000. And then now, boom, they're at 50. And so it's like, oh, I'd have to sell everything, to be able to get it. And it's a hard decision.
Yeah, I mean, you're buying a piece of history. Like, it's a piece of history. Not saying that the PMG Red is not, but I mean, like,
Yeah.
there's just so much, just wrapped into something that valuable. And as Spider-Man continues to be in collectors' attention spans, that book will always be relevant.
Yeah, Spider-Man's unique in the sense that he wears a mask. So Spider-Man's never going away because it's a mantle that can be passed on to somebody else, and we see it, and we'll continue to see it passed on to Miles Morales. And to me, that gives such longevity to the first Spider-Man. The AF-15 is not rare in terms of like pop count. Like there's 90 of the red Spider-Mans, right? PMGs, but at the same time, to me, I think it's going to. I think the AF-15 is going to continually outpace it, and I would rather have that.
Yeah, and I would make a similar comparison to Michael Jordan,
Mhm.
86 Fleer PSA rookies, that there's a lot of them, but there's only one. There's, people like to consider the 84 star, but PSA and a lot of the grading companies don't even grade those cards because it's hard to tell if there's even, it's people have made such good reprints that it's hard to differentiate. But just point being that, you know, he's the greatest basketball player of all time with the greatest shoe brand, and this is his one rookie. So
Mhm.
if you want a slice of the pie, then this is the one that you have to get, whether that's a PSA 1 or
Yeah.
or a PSA 10. And I think that it's no different with Spider-Man. I mean, people in Michael Jordan 86 Fleer, it's almost like a club once you own one of them. And I'm guessing
Okay.
it's the same thing if you own it, an AF-15,
I
where
wouldn't I
you
wouldn't know, but I guarantee you it's a club. I 100% believe that the price of entry is only one. Uh, if Michael Jordan ends well, because a lot of guys don't, as they go into the sunset, right? if he ends well, I think owning one of those is going to be just massive down the road, and hopefully he will. Hopefully nothing ever comes up. That's the one thing that scares me about Michael Jordan is
And the only rebuttal I would say to that is I think that his brand is what's going to help at the end of all this. Just because 50 years from now, there's going to be a child who's probably going to have Jordan on, and they're going to ask, who is this logo man? And
yeah,
somebody's going to explain to him, well, he was the greatest basketball player,
right.
arguably. And so
So kind of like
I
Michael
always,
Jackson, the brand has outpaced the negative.
well, I think Jackson's gotten himself in a lot more trouble than Michael Jordan has in
Hmm.
terms of off field
For
stuff
sure,
that could.
100%.
So it's more of, I guess, the fact that just attention span. People are going to always know who Jordan is just based off of the brand. And I think that's why Wilt Chamberlain still sells well nowadays. He doesn't have a shoe company, but people
Right.
ask, who was the guy who scored 100 points in a basketball game? And they're going to go, well, that's Wilt Chamberlain, you
Yeah.
know? So in that sense, the legacy is always going to last. And Jordan's company and the fact that he's the number one, most popular shoe in the world, I think is only going to help people want to collect Jordan, even if they've never seen him play or, wasn't even around when he was alive. But to your point, things can happen, which can
Yeah.
quickly change things. So
But
that's also something to keep in mind.
yeah, so the thought I have in mind is back with Spider-Man, and it kind of goes back to the Gary Vee comment. He can't tear an ACL, right? You know, and Disney has such a long history of protecting its properties. I mean, the mouse has never been worth more, and it's almost 100 years old, right?
Yeah, and I guess my question to you, and these are just thoughts I've had,
Hmm.
is at some point there might be a dud. Now that's not saying Spider-Man, but the amount of content that they're now producing MCU, I'll be curious to see what happens if there's a
Yeah,
movie that has
there has
high
been one.
expectations.
Yeah, Eternals to me was a dud.
Well, from a card related perspective, I don't know, now you could answer this question probably. I know I can't. Did
Right.
the comics drop in price based on the reaction of the movie compared to where they were selling before?
So I can answer that in the sense of the awareness that I have that Eternal books were showing up kind of in a trending top 10, and they're gone. They're
Okay.
not there now. And so, and that's even if there's some speculation that they might show up later. An example would be Black Knight. Okay. So Black Knight was trending. They attached a really good actor to him, who was the main actor in Game of
Jon
Thrones,
Snow.
Jon Snow. Yeah, just an amazing actor. And just mishandled him in the movie, in my opinion. Okay, that's just my opinion. And that comic book has dropped because of it.
Yeah, so and I think from a being in the card world that I am, that's a perspective where we're still, I think, just so early in
Yeah.
this Marvel card train because there's not many cards of these of Eternals
Well,
or Black Knight where the comic book world can always reference those
mhm.
first appearance comics as sort of an idea of how was this received by the audience or by the comic book collecting audience.
Well, I think
So
that's why it's important to tier characters where Spider-Man top tier, Wolverine top tier. You could put a couple of others like Deadpool, Venom, in those top tiers, and then you got tier twos, right? Who are strong and likely will, outpace any movie flop potential. And then you have tier three that's strictly solely going to be based on how well that character is represented on the screen. And Black Knight certainly fits in that tier three. Most people don't even know who he is, period, right? Um, but if he hits well, he becomes the next Star Lord, and everybody
yeah,
knows who he is.
and he's somebody who whose cards Star Lord, who I thought would maybe see more of a pickup, just based on being Chris Pratt. But maybe we'll see that when what's it, Thor 2 comes out or Guardians of the Galaxy 3, which I
Yeah,
think
we're gonna have both.
yeah. So, but totally, and that's where from a sports collecting and investing world, it's absolutely fascinating because things like that can happen. But yeah, you can't tear an ACL, but you could potentially have a flop,
Right.
or and that's where I guess the comic book world is already understanding of that, and I'm curious to see that continue to grow. I guess that sort of knee jerk reaction per se to market trends,
Yeah.
in cards as well.
Well, the comic book world is similar to Marvel card collecting in that The people who like that character already have that book, already have that card. And then you have those who are chasing it from a spec standpoint, who just want to be, they want to own it before it gets priced out and then maybe sell it one day and flip it into other books. And so, again, that falls in that tier 3 for me. Miss Marvel will be an example of one right now. Who do you know buying Miss Marvel cards? Almost nobody. And I'm talking about um, not Captain Marvel. Okay, just to make sure that people understand what I'm talking about. And but that stream that may hit big on Disney Plus, and kids may love it, and it may be a great card that you wish you would have held, like a Miles Morales early on. And so that kind of is that, the same, I'm sure, practice that you have in sports card, which is you kind of want to be buying when everybody is selling and then selling when everybody's buying. So right now I'd be buying Miss Marvel if you're trying to, maybe have something that might hit.
Totally, yeah, and I don't particularly own any of his cards because he doesn't have any, but loved Wesley Snipes when he played him as I was growing up. But Blade, you have an Oscar-winning actor that's taken
Really
that over,
good
and
actor.
Mahershala Ali, and so. But to your point, there's just a lot of different plays now that maybe that wasn't something that was possible with Marvel cards, and it's absolutely great to see.
Yeah. So Kevin says discussions like this give me the feeling that the sports card folks embrace Marvel cards slightly more than the comic book community. I would say yes, because it's trading card to trading card. The difference maker eventually will be CGC. If CGC, who is the premier grader of comic books, grades Marvel cards, I think you will see comic book guys move into the Marvel card space. But right now, you can't get a CGC graded Marvel card, which I understand why, and that's another conversation for another day because it'll take a while. But hopefully that'll happen eventually. Let's see here. Oh, see you, Drake. Appreciate you, man. Marvelous Pack, Spider-Man 2099, Peter Porker, Noir, Spider Noir, Scarlet Spider, Black Suit Spider-Man, and Spider-Woman are people he's looking at. I'm going to tell you, so Black Suit Spider-Man may end up being the card that I chase in Spider-Man Metal. I'm waiting to see the art. That's a big thing for me in particularly. And then if I pull one of the rare low number cards, that becomes the anchor of a chase. But I would love to chase Black Suit Spider-Man and Spider-Gwen as well. Let's see here. Teapot wants to know what's our top 5 movies from the MCU. Are you ready for that?
I mean, I can maybe give you 3.
All right.
This constantly changes for me, especially after what I saw last week with Spider-Man 3. But I'd love to hear your thoughts first.
Yeah, let me go. Let me go first. So, walking out of the theater of Spider-Man 3, No Way Home, that was the best I felt about any movie. Where I wasn't like, why did they do that? Why is Thor fat? Like, like I didn't have any of those thoughts walking out. I went, they paid me off at every point of expectation. I am well pleased. And so, obviously there's a lot of, recent bias here with No Way Home, but I'd have to put it number 1 at the time being. Number 2 is tough for me because it's going to be between the first Avenger or Iron Man 1. Because of just how much I enjoyed them when I first watched them, and then kind of what they meant for the MCU as a whole. I'll jump to number 4 here. This one is going to be based on me watching it again after Endgame, and that would be Age of Ultron. When I originally watched Age of Ultron,
Wow.
all my focus was on Ultron himself as a character, and I walked away going, not really sure I was really into it. But after understanding how the entire series unfolded and going back and watching all the Easter eggs and what they were pointing to, it just blew me away. And I really, really enjoyed that movie. I think it's probably one of the most critical movies in the whole series. And then number 5 would have to be the first Guardians of the Galaxy. I went in with zero expectations. Even as a comic book guy, I didn't really know who I was even going to be watching. And the sheer humor and joy and fun that came out of that movie, like it was awesome.
Yeah, that's a solid top 5. I'm surprised to hear Age of Ultron just because I've heard a lot of people say that was their least favorite of the Avengers movies per se, but that's what's great about these sort of top fives, that everybody can have their favorites for, whatever reason, so I would say for me, number one has got to be Avengers 1. I think
Mhm.
just bringing that ensemble together was absolutely breathtaking and something that I'll always remember as a moviegoer.
Yeah.
This might have recency bias, but definitely, No Way Home, to piggyback what you said. The expectations lived up to the results, and whether that's movies or sports or life in general, that sometimes doesn't happen.
Rarely,
So,
I would
the
say.
yeah, the fact that I was able to walk out of the theater and go, that's exactly what I ordered, and it was absolutely fantastic. You know, so that's number two for me. For other reasons too that maybe we'll get into a little bit later. Um, then I would say number three is probably Captain America 1. Just being a scrawny kid from New Jersey, I was able to really relate to the first Avenger
Yeah.
and his journey I haven't been able to find the soldier serum yet, the super soldier serum yet,
But you
but
can do this all day, right?
exactly. So uh, you know that was something that really struck a chord with me seeing that movie. I would say three is Infinity War. I just from start to finish was absolutely glued. Uh, Perfect cliffhanger to leave the audience with.
Yeah.
Uh, to go, man, can we keep watching now?
Right.
So, um, and then 4 or 5 it usually jumps around. I think I'll just stick with three right now.
Yeah. No, you're good.
Age of Ultron, yeah, Age of Ultron wasn't my absolute favorite. So
Well,
Endgame
one
was
that I left off that people really like is Civil War. That's a lot of people's top 5.
yeah, which it's not in my top five now.
Mhm.
Now that I've had some extra time to think about it, I would say four is Winter Soldier.
Yeah.
They just
Yeah.
they just made it a spy movie, and it was great. And the combat involved was absolutely fantastic. So, um, and then five, I would say, is probably Endgame, just based off of the payoff with
Sure.
years of going to the theater and it finally coming to fruition. But I know there's a few that I'm probably forgetting.
Oh,
Obviously love
yeah,
the
there's
Iron
only like
Mans.
23 movies to think through.
Exactly. Now this will be something with shows next. What are your
Yeah,
top five shows? And we'll have to go through this all over again.
absolutely. So, look, we got Gingy Man in the house. Gingy Man, I think, is just one of the jewels of Marvel cards. Our boy from the UK representing and, giving a lot of great content all the time. Really love Gingy. He's also on Pack Fresh podcast. Yeah, Dave, yeah, there can be Spider-Man fatigue. Um, some of us can't get enough of it, but I definitely respect that. And let's see. After the credit of Black Knight scene, oh yeah, that was important, but it just didn't do much for the movie. And let's see. If there is a bad Spidey comic story, then there's a recon reboot. Just totally ignore it. Yeah, that has actually happened a lot, actually, in Spider-Man. They just completely erase it. Let's see here. Silk cards always sell high. She doesn't appear in any MCU properties. Yes, Silk is still relatively new. She's a modern character. Her first appearance in a comic book in a 9.8, you can still get for like under $500. It's not the greatest cover of all time. It's probably part of that. But uh, if when she shows up in the MCU, she's going to blow up like Spider Gwen. I really believe that. Oh dang! Ian's gonna chase Black Suit Spider-Man too. Yeah. Well, I'll just go ahead and bow out to you, my friend. I'll just chase Spider-Gwen instead. Iron Man won for him because he picked up his kids from school in the car line with the back. Yeah.
I remember him telling me that at Collector's Con when I saw him, and that's the same thing. I remember seeing a Iron Man one with my dad. I was 14,
Mhm.
15 years old.
Oh, look at Teapot's list. He gave us his Infinity War, Ragnarok, Endgame, Civil War, and Shang-Chi. Shang-Chi, I should say. Uh, that's interesting. I think it's probably because, and I don't know Teapot from his Marvel card history or Marvel history. It's probably because I watched the TV shows growing up and I read the comic books, read the backs of Marvel cards, so I had all this kind of bias built up before I ever went into the movies. Is probably why that's the case.
Which totally makes sense to somebody like me who, was getting introduced to a lot of this stuff and then going back to the source material and being like, oh, okay.
Yeah.
Which to me, I could be wrong, but maybe that's why some of the comic world maybe isn't as enthusiastic about some of the Marvel stuff that comes out or how it's portrayed,
Oh,
because they
huge.
know that it came out an original way, a certain way, and now it's necessarily been changed for the worst in some eyes.
It's taken some time, but it's the reality of that there are more than one canon. You have the MCU canon and the Marvel 616 comic book, universe canon. And sometimes they marry together and a lot of times they don't. And for those who are not tainted by the comic book storyline, you get to really just enjoy and appreciate the story that unfolds in front of you on screen. And I think it changes how you view those movies. Paul says, it will be interesting to see how Marvel cards / comics perform 10 years down the road when the MCU has to potentially execute a soft reboot or even a full reboot. Hammer, do you mind if I talk about this for a second?
Go ahead. Floor is
So,
yours, my friend.
well, something that I've really just a general observation, not something I've studied by any stretch of the imagination. But when you look at the content that's being produced, period, from Netflix, Hulu, Amazon, Disney Plus, whatever, Disney's really the only one that's like really killing new content. The others are almost like rebooting movies and reshooting movies. Like it's kind of like they just don't have a lot, a deep well to draw from a content standpoint. And there's just so much depth in the Marvel space of these stories that have already been developed that already have like this baseline of fandom. It just, to me, is one of the reasons why Disney is knocking it out of the park with Marvel stuff. They're not having to reinvent the wheel or reboot, so to speak. I mean, let's just point out Spider-Man for a second. And spoiler alert here for guys and gals who have not watched Spider-Man. Give you like 5 seconds. We love you. We'll talk to you later. But for me to build this case, I have to mention some of the stuff that happened in the latest movie. But all right, spoiler alert done. So at the end of the movie, we get Spider-Man rebooted. Okay, so let's think about this for a second. So for Peter Parker to become Spider-Man, something very pivotal has to happen. His loved one has to be dying and look at him and say, with great power also comes great responsibility. We got how many, 5, 6 movies with Spider-Man in it before that moment happens. And then at the end of the movie, everything's erased. He's never been an Avenger in terms of the memory of people. Never been an Avenger. No one knows that Peter Parker's Spider-Man. And he's back to being a street level hero who's jumping out of his apartment window to go save someone from being robbed from a street level villain. And to me, like, it's still so much in front of him to be developed that doesn't require a reboot.
Yeah, I totally 100% agree. And that's where I said to my girlfriend when I went to the movie, Miles Morales isn't even they're holding that for now,
Mhm.
and that just shows because I walked out of there going, I need to know more now because like you said, there's just so much more out in front, ahead, and I think Miles Morales is going to have a big role at some point. And just back to the question, I think that the writing is still up to par. So as long as they can continue to intertwine and weave these particular stories, I think, because to me, when RDJ, Robert Downey Jr., and Chris Evans hung it up, that was to me a soft reboot, as in okay, but they already had Doctor Strange, Brie Larson as Captain Marvel, who they're going to be happy to come out with,
Right.
Elizabeth Olsen as Scarlet Witch. So to me, I think that they are understanding of that and know, hey, if we keep building these characters,
Mhm.
like and that's where I was mentioning Ned, who, if I'm not mistaken, I think in the comics is Hobgoblin, if I'm not.
Correct.
So like that's probably why there's certain people that are buying, that the actor's autograph because they're maybe thinking that he's going to have a bigger role at some point, even though we've been getting a sample sizes of Ned for the past 3 movies, and it just seems he's getting more and more screen time in that sense. So just to your point, it just it makes a lot more opportunities to be able to have stuff already set in stone and ready to roll,
Hmm.
you know. And if Chadwick Boseman didn't pass away, I only imagine the thoughts and the ideas that they were going to potentially have. You know, I'm curious to see where that franchise goes. But that's just an example of where obviously they maybe had to pivot from maybe something where they were
Yeah.
hoping he was going to be in the forefront to maybe take over of some of these other actors who no longer want to play some of the big names that are, you know,
Yeah.
coming in.
Black Panther's tough because he just dominated the role so well. I mean, just owned what it means to be Black Panther. That there's like the desire to kind of honor him with that, that mantle. But Black Panther is a mantle. It's passed down from generation to generation. There's not only one. So they can definitely do it. It's just, will they get to the point where they feel like, hey, we're not going to dishonor him by naming another Black Panther? I think Marvel needs Black Panther. I think it's important to the storyline. I think it's important to the diversity that exists within Marvel as a whole, as a property. Just just beautiful people, beautiful area in Wakanda and Africa, and it's important to the Namor story, uh, who is coming, who then eventually is tied into Doctor Doom. So I don't see how they're not going to do Black Panther in some ways. But kind of circling back to Spider-Man, what I saw happen with Spider-Man 3 is you have Sony, who owns the Tobey Maguire Spider-Man, and they own Spider-Man obviously as a whole, but the already produced properties, and then the Andrew Garfield Spider-Man. And every time Tom Holland stepped on the screen, the value of those two characters dropped. Every time, in my opinion. Like, people were moving away from my Spider-Man's Tom Holland, away from Tobey Maguire and Andrew Garfield. And I have a feeling when negotiations broke down, however many years ago, 2-3 years ago now, I think part of the agreement that they came to was, hey, we've already have these properties that we've already completed and invested a lot of time and money in. We want the value of those to come back up, and the way we do that is bring them into the MCU. And if you would have like told me a year ago that that was going to be like the why behind the movie, which it clearly is now to me, I would have said it's not going to work. Like, it's just going to be this mosh posh forced storyline where they shove these guys in, maybe right at the end to help save the day, blah blah blah. That is not what happened in Spider-Man 3. It was beautifully scripted and rolled out. They character developed all three Spider-Man in one movie. To me, that Andrew Garfield left quite possibly a crowd favorite, where he entered in as being like the low man on the totem pole. They made fun of that, you know. So to me, the you mentioned the writing, how well they scripted that and then played that out on the screen was just perfect.
Totally. You know, when you know Ned opened up the time hole and those two guys came through, it was probably just as big, if not a bigger reaction than I got at Endgame when the portals opened up, which said a lot to me. I mean, the girl next to me was blew out my right eardrum because she was so excited to see Garfield,
Wow.
which I absolutely love. I'm usually used to that at sporting events, so it's great to see somebody who has the similar passion as myself. But totally, I thought they knocked that aspect out of the park, bringing those two guys in and how they were able to methodically, you know, bring them in. You know, and to your point about values, you know, like Andrew Garfield's autograph cards from 2012 Rittenhouse have actually been picking up some steam. I mean, they've more than doubled in certain cases. There
Wow.
hasn't been too many that have been sold, but all I could tell you is before the movie release, they were going for $200, $300, $400,
Mm-hmm.
and you know now I think one or two of them were sold for over 1,000. You know, since the movie released. So that's an example. Another one is an RPA, which is, we like to say RPA in sports cards, which is a rookie patch autograph. So
Okay.
there's our Andrew Garfield costume card autograph from the 2012 Rittenhouse set. The same thing. I think one sold at auction a couple days ago for like $1,100. Same thing.
Wow.
Those were going for only $300 or $400. So to your point with them wanting to bring, I think you are starting to see that, and even some of the other characters. I forget the actor's name, but who plays J. Jonah Jameson. His autographs have been
Mm-hmm.
popping up from Spider-Man 3, and I've seen some uptick as well. So you're seeing a reaction from certain people in the card market off of those other franchises. Now, Tobey Maguire doesn't have any Spider-Man autographed cards, I don't believe, but clearly people saw that movie and walked away thinking he was the fan favorite. He might have a card, so let me go and get it, So that's just an example too, where bringing them back then jog people's memories of older sets that came out that really didn't have much popularity that are now, getting more popularity, especially with, some of the news coming out that now they might be, putting Venom and, Andrew Garfield's Spider-Man in the next movie, which is only going to maybe fuel the fire for Andrew Garfield related Spider-Man autographs or, the Amazing Spider-Man, comics that he's related to, if I'm not mistaken.
I tell you, I think Venom is a great buy right now. He's already a top 3 character. Okay, so let's go ahead and get that out of the way. So he's expensive, but the Fox Sony Venom just really didn't hit well in the comic book community. I don't think it hit as well as it could have even in the movie space. But because he left a piece of symbiote in the Tom Holland verse, as I'll call it, and we're likely going to get a different Eddie Brock as Venom, while also still getting the current Venom in the Andrew Garfield movie. I think Disney will knock it out of the park with Venom, and it's going to be great.
I do wonder if they'll bring back the actor from that '70s show, because I do know somebody asked him, in Spider-Man 3, with Tobey Maguire, he's the one that is Venom.
Oh yeah, that's right.
So he was jokingly, somebody asked him if he was in the movie, and he just jokingly, told the plot about it and, basically joked at the question. But just to your point, me seeing that end credit scene, made me really excited for where this all is going to go and who that actor might, be to take over, or if they're going to bring back that Eddie Brock from Tobey Maguire's Spider-Man to make an appearance. Go ahead.
Well, I was just going to say the storyline of Eddie Brock as he becomes Eddie Brock now fits in the current arc of Tom Holland and kind of retelling that origin story because of where Tom Holland is in the way it ended and where he's at. So I think it's going to be a real possibility. So Dave here says, still have Fantastic Four, X-Men, and Ghost Rider to get to. Good Lord. There's so much, right?
So much. I've talked to you about, Nova. I'm not too sure what sort of role or which Nova it's going to be, but
Feige has
that's
pretty
something where
much
that's probably a tier 3 situation where you don't they've said Kevin Feige has said that he's going to be involved in something at some point, but the details are very, very slim. So, right. But that's another character too, almost along the lines of Blade, where people, are just kind of keeping that to them, to themselves per se, or just waiting to see what, how that comes into fruition and how people necessarily react.
I think Nova's a great character to look into. If you're wanting to kind of invest in a character who's still kind of cheap that you're going to get to see on the big screen, I think Nova's a great option. Agree about Disney, even compared to Netflix. They're not done nearly as well as the Disney shows. Yeah. They just know how to storytell and they don't get in their own way. That's it. Well, except with Eternals. Yeah, they got in their own way with Eternals, but
but totally. I mean, bringing Charlie Cox back, bringing back, Kingpin and the Hawkeye, those are the things that they can do now that they're clearly willing to do. So now folks are going to go back and watch the Daredevil Netflix show, who probably didn't know who Kingpin was until up to seeing that episode and somebody saying, if you haven't seen Daredevil, then you should probably see it because it's the same character.
Oh, and I've watched the first 2 seasons. I actually haven't finished the third. It was great. So Marvel Guy mentions that T'Challa's sister in the movie will become the next Black Panther. So Siri.
I think it's Yuri, I believe.
Yuri. Yeah, I don't know why I can't remember all of a sudden.
It's either Yuri or Shuri, Shuri.
Shuri. Yeah, it's Shuri. That's right. She becomes Black Panther in the comic books. This was written before the movie was released. It absolutely happens. It's a comic book that's been spec'd on quite a bit. It's taken a dip because Marvel won't commit to her. And then I think she, I don't want to mix up headlines, but I think she says some things that got her in a little bit of trouble about COVID.
She did. So, well, I don't know what that's going to necessarily hold for that individual actor or the character, herself. But I did read that as well.
Well, Disney's MO is to kind of shun that person for like 6 or 8 months and then bring them back. That's
So they
that's
probably
their
just
MO.
pushed back filming.
Well, yeah, they've done that with directors. They did that with Cara Dune in Mandalorian. She's coming back after she got suspended or whatever. So I wouldn't be surprised if she comes back. And from an investment standpoint, if that stuff doesn't bother you, she's probably a low buy right now, to be honest with you. Tyler, at what point did you guys at Sports Card Investor start really taking Marvel cards seriously, if he's allowed to ask?
Yeah, I mean, like I kind of mentioned with our VP over on the product side with Teapot, it's been something that we've been looking at and sort of keeping an eye on for probably a year and a half or so now, or a year, and me kind of being the MCU stand in the office, kind of just letting folks around me know, hey, there's some other non-sports stuff that may take off at some point as the movie factory and the series factory for Disney starts putting out a lot more of this stuff. And that's not just for Marvel too. That also goes for Star Wars and other big, franchises and things like that. So one reference I can give you is when we started going down, and started buying, certain cards and things like that. Some of these PMGs from 2013 and 2015 were going for anywhere from $20 to $50. So that just gives you an idea. Now I have less than a handful, so it wasn't like I was buying all of those. So congrats to individuals who saw those opportunities and took advantage of them.
Right.
But that just gives you an idea of kind of when I started to try to look more into the Marvel cards and realizing this is going to start up again content wise with the MCU and it being on screen. So this might be worth, because if it's anything like comics, if the reception from the card community is anything like how the comic market goes, then I can see a similar trend in that sense. So that's the best answer I could give you. We're still trying to get Jeff there. I got to get him to sit down and watch the MCU movies. I think he's getting through. He's powering through them every so often, but he's a very busy man. So one of these points, I hope that I can get him to add a PMG to his collection.
Yeah, I think it'd be a wise one. When you show him that 365-day chart of what Marvel cards PMGs have done, like I think it'll have his attention.
Precisely, exactly.
See, there were he's talking about when you heard those screams when the Spider-Man came through the portal there. Marvelous Packs hearing rumors that Norman Reedus, is that how you say his last name?
Mm-hmm.
For Ghost Rider. I think that's been confirmed now, hasn't it?
I don't know if it's been confirmed. I think I read this morning there was another actor. I don't know who the name was, but was also sort of making social media hints where I think that's where Norman Reedus is. That's where he basically posted like a GIF of himself riding a motorcycle when that news came out. So I think, but I think he's also publicly said that he wants to do it. But I mean, I think he's from The Walking Dead, not an actor that I'm not necessarily 100% familiar with, but Ghost Rider has obviously been around for a while. I do remember the Nicolas Cage, Ghost Rider attempts when I was growing up. So I do hope that they could knock this out of the park. And these are the things that I love to see now in Marvel, and that wasn't necessarily in the MCU. All of this news related stuff that to me is similar to sports, new guys getting signed, guys getting traded, certain news like that. This now causes more of that stuff to come on the forefront, since there's new characters, there's new people that need to become these characters. When you see guys like Jim Carrey's getting casted as
MODOK.
Yes, thank you. Like that makes me jump for joy. You're seeing Christian Bale, I think, is going to be the villain in Thor.
Yeah,
in the next
Gore,
in the
the
next
God
Thor.
Butcher.
Yeah, and like this was a guy who was Batman when I was growing up, and put comic movies in my generation on the map. In terms of they can really go nuts.
Look, if you ask me to give you my top comic book movies of all time, superhero movies of all time, it's going to be really hard for me not to put Batman Dark Knight as number one. I mean, it's insane.
Yeah, and honestly, I always thought we can't afford them. like, man, if we could get Christian Bale in the MCU somehow. I
Yeah.
always thought we can't afford him. He's clearly getting out of this game so we could do other stuff. But look at the success has now come, and now Christian Bale obviously is willing to hear was willing to hear offers per se, and now we're getting a guy like that in the MCU who's one of the biggest actors in all of Hollywood.
I think one of the reasons he's coming is because of the character he's getting to play. I mean, look into Gore the God Butcher. This is what I'm about to say has no basis in reality. This is just me purely speculating. But, and this is, so if you're afraid that this might be a spoiler, jump off. But Gore the God Butcher has to butcher gods to be a legit villain. What gods will he butcher?
Probably Thor.
Probably Thor. And Jane Foster becomes Thor.
Yeah, and
that's my thought process. That's why I think Jane Foster is someone huge to pick up in both Marvel card space and comic book space. I went out and got a couple of her 9.8 first appearances. I've got her What If comic book, and any of her cards that I can get my hands on at a reasonable price, I'm grabbing.
Yeah, which is really smart, and it was great to see that they're bringing back Natalie Portman. Which was something I was a little upset about. When they did have her, and then there was a bit of a hiatus there. So
yeah, she gets emotional.
Really exciting
about who she portrays. Like sometimes she's glad she was in Star Wars, sometimes she's not. She's a tremendous actress, right? And I think sometimes she looks down at her own roles because they're maybe not worthy of how good of an actress she is. But I'm really happy she's back. Marvel guy says we need a Tobey Maguire card dancing. That would be that'd be a lot of fun.
Yes, I was dancing like that to and from the movie theater when I went to go see it. So
I need to practice that dance. Eddie the Rock as Venom. I mean, I'm sure he would love to be in the MCU. I know he's doing some DC stuff right now, but he's definitely he's built for the role. That's for sure. He's a little older than maybe I want Eddie Brock to be, though. Dave says Jeff is his fraternity brother from University of Florida.
There we go. I'll have to let him know. There we go.
Thanks. No thanks.
I agree. No thanks. I went to Florida. I went to FIU down in Miami, so a little bit south of Florida.
A little bit south. Got it. Well, as an LSU fan, I can't root for the Gators. We like to beat up on them. Gingy, appreciate your answer. And Batman cards have great value. So I have a thought. I'd be curious. Could you imagine that a world exists where we have a Batman PMG and a Superman PMG?
I'm hoping this recent trailer of the new Batman looks pretty darn good, and I think you're going to see some similar big sales. Depending on how that movie does. I think it's going to do very well. I think it gets released only about 30 or 60 days after it's released on HBO Max as well. So folks who maybe don't want to go see it right away can also just wait to watch it from home, which is what I'll probably apt to do. But I think it comes out in late February. But back to your point, yes, I don't really know what is going on with DC, card related products.
Yeah.
I know that there's like I think it's maybe 95 Chrome or something like that.
They have a Masterworks, I think is what it is called.
Yeah, I think so. Cause like I've seen some, Shazam related, Chrome cards. I think I've seen a Black Adam related Chrome card. But outside of that, I don't really haven't seen much from the DC cards, and I'd love to hear your thoughts, on DC cards in the current state, maybe without going too off the beaten path here. But, there's so much opportunity, I believe, and at least from the research I've done, it seems like there's a lot more vintage collectors going after some of the 60s Batman related stuff.
Well, the problem is the licensing. I'm trying to pull it up here, but I think Cryptozoic Entertainment has the DC license. Let me share this with you guys. So stop that. Share screen. Sorry, I didn't have this queued up already. Didn't realize we were going to get here. But so Cryptozoic Entertainment here, You can see kind of newer modern boxes here from 2016, but I think that they still actually have the license to DC for trading cards, and they DC does not want them putting out a lot of product. I think they're kind of playing out that license, and then eventually we'll pull it and give it to, I'm guessing, like Tops or Upper Deck or something like that. That's what I think is happening. I haven't done enough research to confirm it for you guys. I'm happy to do that if need be, but I think that's the real issue with DC and why we're not seeing a lot of trading cards.
Yeah, because even from a movie side of it, I haven't seen anything really, like any
Well,
trading card sets from any of the Christian Bale Batmans or anything of that nature, which compared to Marvel, where, I know that franchise was some years before Iron Man's kicked off, but just point being, it seems like they're less dabbling in the trading card space compared to Marvel, who seems to be diving in head first.
I need to go and I have some non-sport magazines where they were previewing some of the new DC releases. I need to go check that out. I think and confirm that it's with Cryptozoic, but they have been doing some new releases, but man, they're just, yeah, nobody wants them because they're not Tops, Upper Deck, or even Panini. Panini has a Marvel card license for international, just not in the States. But if any of those companies had it, I think people would put a lot more trust in that product because it has familiarity to it. I don't know anything about Cryptozoic.
Either do I. This is the first I've heard of them,
Mm-hmm.
but it also makes me wonder if the lack of DC's success on the big screen also has something to do with the lack of maybe popularity around their cards compared to the MCU, at least for, certain collectors where that's helped them get involved into it, was seeing it on the big screen.
Yeah. So these guys make a couple of good points. Marvelous Packs with like Rittenhouse, who still does non-sport stuff, to get DC. I think that would be fine. He also, Marvel guy says he'd be bummed if Fanatics bought it because then that would probably put him out of the Marvel game. Which, I mean, it makes sense. Look, Fanatics needs a competitor for it to be as good as it needs to be. If it doesn't have a competitor, we're not going to get as good of a product as we would get otherwise. So we need Upper Deck or somebody to stay in the game.
Which is what I'm hoping for.
Mm-hmm.
It is what it is. If it ends up not being the case, but I totally agree with you. I'd like to still see Tops and Upper Deck still controlling these spaces,
Mm-hmm.
while Fanatics maybe wants to take the reins over on sports cards, which have really, got on the forefront over the past, year and a half.
Well, you as a baseball guy definitely would love to see Topps stay in it, right? Because isn't that the top brand for baseball?
Yeah, and that's where this is going to get interesting. I don't know if they're going to take the the licensing per se to be able to keep Tops on it.
Mm-hmm.
I've talked with my friends, I've talked with my father, and it's going to be hard to have a Fanatic symbol. It's going to be hard for me to digest that, at least right away.
Yeah.
So I do hope that they keep it because as a baseball collector, that's all I've known to collect is Tops, so I'll be curious to see what happens there because, if they lose the branding or they don't take the branding, then I think that's not going to be good for the hobby. And
Yeah.
maybe there might be some collectors, specifically like my people, like my dad or folks who have been buying Tops packs since they were, kids, might not want to really be willing to be a part of this new movement with having to now learn all new, because that's how far does this go? Is it all going to be new? So if Tops is gone, then are you making all new sets? So now I have to learn a whole new lingo of sets. It's no longer Prism, Optic, Select for football and basketball.
Mm-hmm.
And now I have to, so there's going to be a lot that needs to get sifted out. And that's where with Marvel cards, I'm hopeful that Marvel's the Upper Deck's like, now, we know what we have here.
Mm-hmm.
And this is just getting started, So
yeah, well, heritage is important, right? In terms of collecting, and if you can't see, rated rookie, I say that right, on your Tops baseball rookie cards, that's going to be an issue for you.
Yeah. So just to clarify, the rated rookie that used to be on on older baseball sets from the 80s and 90s. Donruss is now on Panini's side, which
Really?
is So they make Donruss unlicensed MLB cards that have rated rookie on it. I just don't want you to go out and start buying rated rookies, which might not be the right rookie card. But yes, Topps has a rookie symbol that is red and blue. That's the that's the rookie symbol. Similar to the rated rookie, like you just said. So it will be hard to imagine that they just decided to scrap nearly 100 years worth of marketing.
Right. Look, Ian, who is a Rick and Morty fan, knows that Cryptozoic has Rick and Morty sketch cards.
Nice. Okay.
And Marvelous agrees with Hammer. Would love to see DC and Marvel both stay with Upper Deck. I mean, I think that would be the right play if they lose ground in the sports card world to Fanatics to just dominate and own the non-sport. I think that'd be great.
And for PMGs in particular, it would be great because then they would be able to actually make them. If they go to somewhere else, they can't make PMGs. It's since Upper Deck's got that.
Mm-hmm. And Upper Deck still owns what rights to some Michael Jordan stuff? Is that right?
Yeah. So the only autograph cards you're going to find nowadays in sets, like you can only find them in Upper Deck products like Goodwin Champions, maybe some other high end where it shows Jordan not in any NBA licensed stuff. So it'll be him maybe just in like a golf shirt or him in a plain practice shirt. But yeah, and that's where like some of this stuff I'll be, with the movies and the actors, I don't know where that would go. So like, an example is I think Mike Trout is another guy who has exclusive rights with Topps. Fanatics takes that over. He's probably just going to either say no or his contract is just going to shift over. And that's where I'd be curious to talk to somebody at Upper Deck to hear how their relationships are built with, when they do these set related releases and they have to, go meet with the actors to get them signed or send the cards or whatever, or how those go into play. Because I know we've talked about this, but like most of the newer stuff, like Robert Downey Jr. only has an autographed Iron Man card in the Rittenhouse set. Like there isn't any out there, which makes me think that he had that in his contract that he didn't want to do any more trading cards after. So I'm guessing that there would be stipulations that would get in place and things like that have to be figured out if Upper Deck was to just give it to Fanatics, and then they'd have to deal with that aspect of Marvel sets.
Yeah. Marvel guy says Topps Chrome Marvel will go crazy if that happened. Like the Star Wars Topps Chrome, I think that's what he's talking about, or sports Topps Chrome. I just don't see Topps having Marvel at any time soon. So that's kind of unlikely to happen, but it would be a cool looking set. I want to remind everybody, Upper Deck is actually doing a Zoom live stream this afternoon. I can't remember the exact times. Somebody in the chat probably knows, but I think it's
4. Is
it 4 Pacific Standard time?
I think it's Pacific. Then it's definitely not Eastern Standard.
Yeah. So I think that's going to be important to be on kind of end of the year, to hear from Upper Deck and to be able to ask questions. I can already guess quite a few. I kind of want to send Dylan, hey, here's what people are going to be asking you. I'm sure he knows, but for them to be prepared for. But I think that's important. Obviously, questions about Spider-Man Metal will be part of the forefront of that, because tomorrow was supposed to be today was supposed to be the release of Spider-Man Metal. Instead, we get a Zoom call. So
and I know one of the questions that was asked before about Spider-Man fatigue. I'm curious of your thoughts behind that, because at least from a content cinema standpoint, they have a Spider-Man freshman year show that's going to be coming out on Disney Plus next year. I think Daredevil is going to be more in play. You obviously have Spider-Man Across the Universe.
That's the art for the freshman year.
Yeah, so that's where I will be curious to, I guess, as these shows do come out, more Peter Parker, if there is any fatigue, or if it's more, more, we need more. And like you said, there might be some folks that are like, we'll take all of the Spider-Man content we can get, whether it's animated, whether it's Spider-Verse, whether it's Tom Holland, whether it's Andrew Garfield, or if people are going to be like, doesn't matter who it is, we're just, we're moving on from the character.
Well, I think it's just different. The animated stuff is actually, I think, designed for a very particular two audiences. Okay, it wants to bring in newer, younger viewers while paying off the nostalgia for guys who are 38 years old, who that was their cartoon growing up. And so I think that's, for me, I can't wait to see it, right? And for the kid, it's going to be brand new and they don't get fatigued, right? To the movie viewer, they're just going to not watch it. I don't think it's going to be a fatigue issue. They're just not going to partake in it. And so I think they're just hitting different segments of the marketplace while putting out stuff that is not terribly expensive. The animated stuff doesn't it doesn't scale like the movie does in terms of cost. So I think it's going to be special. You're going to see that with X-Men 97, which is the same thing as the 90s X-Men cartoon continued. And the same creators are going to be behind it. It's just Disney, again, continuing to knock it out of the park. Neo says that Upper Deck is live now. Neo, are they doing the Zoom call right now? Is that what you're talking about? Or is it something else? Hey, Marvel guy, I will actually, on Twitch, but are they doing a Q&A? That's really the question.
Are they doing just like a product review similar to what they did? I think it was for one of the TCG Marvel sets that they had released.
That's going to be one of my questions to them because they've really been promoting the TCG stuff. And I've been kind of frustrated because I don't see the same effort. There's a Zoom. I shared the Zoom link if that works for people. I don't see the same effort with Marvel cards. Like let's talk about Spider-Man Metal for a second. We got a sell sheet. Like that's it. I don't know of anything else. Maybe Blowout or Beckett did an article, but it's like the same thing they always do. Oh, they're ripping the Weiss Schwartz Marvel stuff. Okay, yeah, that's not the same thing. Okay, actually,
I totally agree with you though, and in terms of them not doing much promotion. I mean, even if it's pushed back, that's okay. But you had, it's probably going to be a top 10 grossing film maybe of all time. I mean, I think at one point last week it was in 19th place. I mean, this movie broke $1 billion for the first $1 billion movie in the pandemic era. So just my thought is there was so much they could have done. I'm not saying you need to get Tom Holland to open up a case on camera, but I mean, there's something that you could have done to intertwine those things. And I just hope that they can have the foresight, because like you said, this isn't like sports where some guy just goes off for 2 weeks who you never heard of and you're like, oh wow, this guy's relevant. Well, no, we knew this movie was coming out 2 years in advance. So that's where I'm hopeful that I understand the TCG stuff and there's totally a market for that, but being able to mesh the two together and being able to try to have some similarities with the movie releases with the box breaks. I mean, I was joking around the office and telling folks I'm getting my box and I'm opening it while I'm watching Spider-Man 3.
Yeah.
And it's probably not gonna be the first time I watch Spider-Man 3, but I'll probably go again in the theater, and that's when I'll do it, because that's the type of experience I can't do that at a ball game, I don't think. Right. I don't even know if they're going to let me walk in with a box of cards, but like, that's just a scenario where, that's something where they could do a lot more to be promoting their certain products. And I hope that that's something that they do as maybe they start to make more of these products down the road.
Yeah, no. Hey, so he says, Marvelous is asking, it's because it's a trading card game, TCG game. Can they get those graded by CGC? I don't think they have the database built for it. They got to build the database first, then they can grade. They got to have somebody on staff who understands that set. Even though it's TCG, I don't think that's the case. That would be my guess.
Yeah, I'm not too sure with that particular grading company, but I know others would if you wanted to maybe do a Beckett or something like that. I mean, they should be able to grade those and send those in or have folks there. I'm assuming if they didn't, they would let you know otherwise.
It's a great question, but I don't see them grading like Overpowered, which is a 90s trading card game and things like that. So
I do see PSA grading those.
You do. To me, those cards were not awesome growing up, so I can't imagine they ever hit now. But I could be wrong because they're trading card games and they'll eventually be considered vintage, and I'll remember the day that I said this.
If it's anything like the sports card market, my guess is that people will just gravitate toward the PSA 10s, the BGS 95s, because there's probably a lot of those that are printed. So raw
Mhm.
wise, you could probably get them a dime a dozen, but any collectors, who maybe really enjoyed that game or investors will probably just go after, the highest grade of it and then let it sit. And I think you're seeing that with a lot of the 90 Marvel Universe and some of those where it's heavy
Mhm.
base cards, no really variations or anything. So the raws aren't going to go for relatively much. But hey, if you've got a 10 and it's low pop, you'll see. But with that, pop reports are just going to, continue to grow, which is what the sports card community saw over the pandemic boom. And you'll probably start to see that if you haven't already started to see it with a lot of these sets like Marvel Universe and a lot of the base heavy ones where, people were just sending these in going, there's only 3 in a PSA 10. Like there's
Right.
barely any of a population. So I might as well send them in and have a shot.
So in the Marvel card community, this so very specific and niched, right? We give lip service to pop reports, but we don't focus on it, and it's not driving our buying decision yet. That will happen. And the way I kind of see that scaling is when you can't get low numbered stamped cards, right? Out of 10, out of 50, out of 100, and you're looking for a point of entry into the hobby, you're going to shift to pop reports and PSA 10s. And I think that's what is eventually going to happen. That's when 90 MU is going to come back into the forefront as cards to have, boxes to own. They're, this, but the Marvel card community that's been here for a while makes fun of collecting 90 MU because I was in a conversation with an OG last night who was like, I was buying those for $50 a box, and now they've settled in around $500 to $800 a box, and it's still mind blowing. But I think from a point of entry in terms of collectible, people will move to the pop reports and they will go back to some of the 90 MU stuff.
That's what I've heard too. Folks basically telling me I'm staying away from a lot of the base stuff and going for the numbered, which to your point makes me understand that at some point all of this numbered stuff is going to get gobbled up. And then to that point, they're going to have to go look for graded. And then that's where you look at the pop reports to know. Because I mean, the Marvel Universe stuff is great, but you're never going to see a type of return like you saw on a red PMG PSA 9 that
Mhm.
person bought for $1,000 and sold for 72.
Right.
So that's just a scenario where the numbered stuff in sports cards is obviously more desired, and that's I think going to continue to be the same case for Marvel.
So did you see the PSA 8 that sold last night of the same red Spider-Man?
I did. It sold for around 18,000, right?
Yeah, I was going to pull it up. I wanted to get your thoughts on that compared to the sales price of the 72,000.
So yeah, I do think that there is a similarity. Uh, things that I've gathered from sports car collecting, where people will buy into the hype before it
Mhm.
happens, and then once it actually happens, then you'll start to see a bit of just a drop off, just because up to that point it was really, 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 really rising. So, like an example would be like Patrick Mahomes cards when he won the Super Bowl a couple of years back. They skyrocketed all the way up into the point of the Super Bowl. The day of the Super Bowl, they started to drop.
The day
So,
of, wow.
so before the game was even played, people were already like, okay, I've seen the progression I want to see. I'm not necessarily going to gamble on if he wins one because I don't want to hold for all of that long. So another data point per se, I guess, would be there's only been on eBay one Tom Holland auto that's been sold since the movie release that I was able to find, and it's not a numbered one. It's from Avengers Endgame, and it's called Legends Never Die sticker auto. It
Mhm.
sold for about $695. I think this auctioned on, I think it was sometime this week, or at least after the movie release. Now, sales prior to that are mostly Black Diamond numbered autos, but those are in the thousands of dollars. So
Mhm.
that's just another scenario where I'm kind of thinking, okay, the movie's come out, people are moving on to something else per se. So you might see a dip for a
Yeah.
little bit. I could be wrong, but based off of those two that I've seen so far out the gate, related to PMGs and to Tom Holland autos, it
Mhm.
seems like, uh, you know, the movie's here now, so let's move on to something else. Those people who bought, up to this are now moving on to maybe something else.
Well, the correlation for me is in the comic book world where when you want to sell is before the movie releases, not
Correct.
when it releases. Now, I understand that the red PMG PSA 9 that sold on Golden Auction for 72,000 was actually the auction ended the day before the movie release? Is that right? Or the day of? One or the other. One or the other.
I thought it was on like the 19th, which was a couple of days afterwards, but I could totally be wrong.
Yeah, no, but it was right there at that, kind of that critical point. Not like a Super Bowl game where it's a moment in time, right? But you want to, if you're selling to cash out, it's actually before it's kind of curated or baked into what it is. So if the timing of this one is actually, I would say, off of selling the PSA 8. Now, I understand that people are putting stuff into golden auctions or eBay. Like, it takes a little time for that stuff sometimes to pop up in the way that they're staggered out through the auctions. But I would say this was a miss timing wise. And whoever bought this is probably going, well, I got it for a third of what the other one cost. So I got a good deal.
Yeah, I totally agree with you. And if that was my card, I would have probably told myself, you unfortunately you should hold this until the next Spider-Man comes out, or if one of these other shows that comes out related to Spider-Man really take off. Because to
Or
me,
until
with
there's
Spider-Man,
a second sale that supports the 72.
yes, correct, which remains to be seen, obviously. I'm not
Mhm.
really too sure where this is going to go now that Spider-Man's going to, be suppressed in terms of attention for a little while. But
Mhm.
they do say Spider-Man 4 is already in development. So that's where, I'm somebody who is a second generation collector. I'm used to my dad buying and holding things for a long time. So that's something with me where I would say to myself, I'll probably just hold this whenever the next
Mhm.
Spider-Man comes out, depending on if, the market continues to go in a positive direction and the community continues to grow. I could probably get this at that price that I want when the next one comes out. Some might
Well,
not agree with me on that, which is totally understandable. But we
another
saw the
thing,
hype leading up to this, leading up to the film being released.
right? Well, if you're looking at kind of how these things can go, kind of the roller coaster, what's happening now is these big buyers, big sales, they're shaking loose PMGs. These cars that were immovable in collectors' collections because they didn't want to unload them for hundreds of dollars. Like, they understood they were special, but now they're seeing 5 digits and that shakes them loose. So these guys who are collectors who would never sell are now selling, and you're going to see PMGs continue to shift out of the original Marvel card collecting community and into more of an investing speculative community, right? Whether you like it or not, people are going to do that. Okay. And once that happens, um, I think if you start to see a couple of consistent high sales that really builds really a floor, you're going to see the PMGs continue to go up. Here's the thing: 18,000 for a red PMG PSA 8, which in my world is like it's the same thing as raw, a PSA 8.
Yep.
That's still a huge number. That's still a massive number for an individual Marvel card, and will probably end up being a good buy for this person down the road. Where 6 months ago is like mind blowing that it sold for that.
Yeah, and another layer to that is, particularly with Spider-Man, is those new PMGs coming out in 2021. It's obviously going to make you wonder what's going to happen with the 2013 through 17 PMGs. My guess is if it's anything like sports, that it may go, might cause more popularity around them compared to maybe people who want to go after the 2021s. But obviously, that's going to cause more population of
Mhm.
Marvel related PMGs, just like when X-Men Metal was released.
Mhm.
So that's also something to keep in mind too.
Yeah. No, I agree. Dave has a question for us here about if they keep pumping out PMGs all the time, does it kill the value of all the years after the earliest?
So I would say probably not with with the Fleer retros from 20 and the Fleer Ultras from 2013 to 2017. Definitely 2013 to 2015 is always, I think, going to hold well. But what are your thoughts?
Well, I have a couple of different thoughts. First of all, 2013 through 17 are going to be in a class of their own until they make as gorgeous of a PMG as 2017. They're going to be in a class of their own. The other reason they're going to be in the class of their own is they were released before the hype, and so they have that chase aspect of it, right? Um, Another part of it, and I have to get an answer from you before I can build on the question, is how many PMGs are being released in sports cards right now?
0, I think. Well, actually, I lied. I'm sorry. They're not.
Hockey,
Yes, Metal Universe this year released 2021 Metal Universe Hockey, which is retail and hobby. So,
right? So if you're a sports card guy and you want a new PMG, you have to go to Marvel Cards or hockey. You don't
yep.
have another outlet. And so when you look at X-Men Metal, which put out, if my math is correct, 20,000 PMGs. Okay. That's 200 times 10 for the greens, 200 times 90 for the reds. So 20,000 PMGs. That's a big number. Totally get it. But when you then narrow that down to the characters of choice, so you have 100 of Wolverine, or 200 because you have a low and a high, or you have 200 of Magneto or Dark Phoenix or Cyclops. It really isn't that much. Then you move into Spider-Man. Let's say the base is the same, 200 card set, and let's say it has a high and a low, where you have the same character twice. So 200 Spider-Man PMGs, and every Marvel card collector is going to want one of those. Every sports card guy coming into Marvel is going to want one. So I don't think that, as long as they kind of keep that structure and it's not coming out twice a year at 20,000 a time, I think they will continue to hold value. But the 2013 through 2017 are going to be unique and special. And I think eventually you'll actually see 2017, it'll never top 2013, but I think it will top 2015 because of the fact that it's a prettier set and it's all Spider-Man, with Miles Morales' first appearance, Spider-Gwen's first appearance, 29's first appearance. So the list goes on and on.
Yeah, and the high series aspect of it, I do think is interesting, since it is going to be different with those being the first appearances, and obviously those are ones that I'm hopeful to pull in that aspect. But I mean, it's honestly it's all fascinating when you sit back and really think about it.
Mm-hmm. Oh, it really is. Neo, who's obviously pretty smart when it comes to this stuff, he thought the PSA 8 would sell about 18,000. He's not surprised. Very good. Very hard to pull a good Spider-Man character in the new PMGs. Remember, all characters have high and low series, so 200 each. And hey, Marvelous agrees with me. That's awesome. That is when
But
grading and pop reports will have an effect, in his opinion. So I think he's also talking about grading PMGs, which are not easy to grade, will then also begin to have a greater impact.
yeah, and it also depends kind of where the popularity goes with this. I mean, one mimic in sports cards that I can tell you is retail is a term that means you can buy it at Walmart or Target,
Mm-hmm.
So like, if they print more, then people will start to gravitate toward the 2013 and 2017, like sports collectors do, because they go, oh, wow, those were only hobby products. So there wasn't much of it printed. There's not much of it sealed, which we know that these boxes from 2013 to 2017 are rather scarce.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that's another reason that's going to add people to maybe want to go back to the 2013 to the 2017s as well.
So, Hammer, what I hear you saying is, like, imagine this big pool of money that's being poured into cards, right? Specifically Marvel cards. You're saying less money will go into the overprinted PMGs in theory, and then back into we'll use the term vintage for lack of a better term, because 2013 through 2017 will eventually be the vintage PMGs, right? And
Correct.
that's where it's headed.
And you'll look at the pop reports in 10 years and go, look how many of these 2021 Metal Universe PMGs are in the pop report. Okay, let's look at 2013 through 2017. Oh, wow. They're all over the board because because the conditions are all over the place because people didn't have them necessarily in great holders or you know, whatever the
Right.
case may be. So that's where, from a sports card mind, that's where people go, oh, okay, let me go after the other ones because there's less of them that are out there, or less of them specifically that are graded.
Mhm. So Ian says all sports in January are supposed to have PMGs.
I can't confirm that. I don't really. I'm not too sure how that's possible with Upper Deck only having a license for the NHL,
Mhm.
unless they somehow. I think
They've
this has to
loaned their
do.
license.
Yeah, but I think this has to do with more of the Fleer brand. I could be wrong, but I know that that's how they are able, I believe, to use these different popular insert names. So that's the only way I could see that. I know T-Pop, you know, who's chatted in here would definitely have known this, but hey, you could very well be right. And if it is, then that's fantastic. I'd love to have an Aaron Donald PMG for football, or you know, a Nolan Arenado PMG for baseball. So
Don't you mean
I'll keep.
Cooper Cup?
And my guy Cooper Cup too. That's right. Every week he keeps putting up points, and every week people keep telling me he's not one of the best. But yeah, that would be
Do you have
really
friends who
cool.
don't understand logic?
Well, you know, they like the name brand players. You know, they like the Devonte Adams out there. They like the Tyreek Hills. So I just tell them I'm glad he's on my favorite team, Cooper
Look,
Cup. So
Matt Stafford had a total of 6 fantasy points, and Cup still ended with almost 22. Like, now I'm talking about fantasy football because he's on my team
yeah,
and got me to the championship. But yeah, no, Cooper Cup PMG, that would be heck. I would even want that. I'm not even a Rams fan. I think you're right. I think what Ian is meaning is all sports that Upper Deck has access to will have PMGs. I think that's what he means. Um, yeah, he's saying the same thing. Dave, I really like when they used to use number boxes on some of the Marvel card sets, and I have an example laying here somewhere. I just don't want to waste anybody's time digging for it, but it tells you there's only 8,000 boxes, which is stupid low, right?
yeah, and I love it too because it adds more of that certificate of authenticity to know there's only X amount of these made, and
Mhm.
this one's unopened, which isn't really done in sports cards. You know, they don't necessarily put tags on that to know that this is a set that's very, very, very limited. So we're going to let you know what number that you
Right.
have, which then brings in, you know, what if you have the first number? I think there was terms that you've used for this, but what if you get number one, or what if you get, you know, the last number,
Yeah.
serial number that
Alpha,
causes it.
Omega.
Thank you. Yes, I heard you use it in one of your other shows, and I was like, you know what, I got to put that in the back pocket. That's a good one. But yeah, so like the alpha and omega aspect, I think it just adds another layer of that, and it would be cool if they could do that with the PMGs, but I'm imagining they don't want us to know how much they're printing.
You talking about in sports? Because they obviously are numbered in
I would
Marvel.
say in sports and non-sports. I'm
Yeah.
assuming that they wouldn't mark the Spider-Man metal boxes.
Oh, you mean the
Uh,
boxes? No, they're not. Yeah, that
yeah.
was a Rittenhouse thing primarily. I mean, Marvel did it with 92 Marvel masterpieces, which is actually kind of fascinating because they knowingly printed 350,000 boxes. Like, to put that in perspective, there was rumored to be 36,000 X-Men metal boxes, which is still available to purchase a year basically later. So there's a ton of that product, but it's numbered on the box. Rittenhouse did it a lot, if I remember correctly. But the recent stuff, you don't get that kind of transparency of this is how many boxes they are. They really don't even tell us how many they printed. We're kind of doing algebra. We're going, if we have X and Y, what's Z? How many boxes there are from a checklist. Ratio hits and all that kind of stuff. All sports is the same. Is the name of the set I was told will have PMGs. Okay. That's what it
Okay,
is.
so yeah, I'll definitely have to do some research on that, Ian. Thank you for bringing that to my attention, because whether it's them, not in their uniforms or not, that's pretty cool. I'll take an MJ PMG even if it's him at the golf course.
Yeah, for sure. Dude, we're almost at 2 hours and 30 minutes. This has
I
been the most fun.
I know we're almost at the same run time as I think Spider-Man No Way Home.
Yeah, but I think this has been just as good. So
Totally, man. This has been really, really fun. And I think it's just the beginning, to be honest with you. And I'm really excited to see where this community goes, where the
Mhm.
Marvel cards go, how Upper Deck can contribute in a positive way, and to see channels like yours, like Gingy Man's, a couple other people that I've mentioned, Marvel Pack Fresh. I'm really excited to see where this train, is going to go.
Well, I would love to do this kind of content with you, as often as you're available, because I think it's important for our community. So you're such a bridge to both worlds, and as people continue to come from, say, the sports card world, so to speak, and into Marvel, they're gonna really need guys like you speaking into their collecting and their hobby.
Totally, and I think it's a match made in heaven, and that's what I tell people at my job. I said I'm right in the middle. I love being the bridge. There's not a one or the other. It's about opportunity, and it's about making a positive community for everybody to feel comfortable and welcome to collect whatever they like, or to or whether that's investing or collecting, and just understanding that there's going to be different strokes for different folks. But at the end of the day,
Mhm.
we're all in this for the same common goal. That's to have fun.
Yeah, absolutely, man. Look, Marvel Guy says one of the best lives of the year. We've got fabulous from Marvelous Packs. Yeah, Dave says thanks. Huge, huge, huge thanks for me. Any way I can ever support you, Hammer, you know how to find me. I'll be available to you. And I'm looking forward to your content on Instagram. You've already done some Marvel stuff with Hammer Time, which is great. And I envision that continue to grow in a really big way.
Yeah, man, definitely. I know we've talked about me getting you on Hammer Time and us maybe having some fun, which I know that we're still going to have in plan. So I know, we're definitely let your audience know when we decide to bring you in and maybe show you the studio and maybe we cook up something fun. So
Well,
really, really appreciate it.
eventually Spider-Man Metal will come out, and we'll do some fun stuff with that.
Exactly. I really can't wait and looking forward to more of this kind of talk.
Absolutely, dude. Well, hey, everybody, thank you for joining. This has been as a ton of fun for me. I hope it's been as much fun for you. I've got more stuff releasing. I am going to break open this Star Wars Topps Chrome here in the next couple of days, kind of in honor of Book of Boba, which I watched this morning, which is good, and and even some more Marvel card stuff. I've got some '90s goodness that I'm really looking forward to breaking into. Actually, some stuff I haven't opened on the channel this year, so that's going to be fun. You can find Hammer on Instagram at I think it's what Hammer
Hammer
SCI.
SCI, yeah, for sports card investors. So just Hammer SCI, all one word. You see, I'm pretty active with just posting stories, whether that's about Marvel announcements, particular cards, as well as some sports stuff too. So, it'd be great to continue to have more followers for Marvel card collectors, particularly because you guys are all great individuals, whether it's honestly guy or girl. I've had great conversations with all of you, and it makes me want to get to know more of you.
Yeah, absolutely. And as you know, you can follow me here on the channel, SpideyG09, Instagram, SpideyG09. Love to interact with you guys, answer any questions that you might have. And, if you haven't, if you would like to subscribe, that'd be awesome. But if not, that's okay. But I hope each one of you have a marvelous day.